Our guy Ash gets betrayed and executed by his own damn family, only to wake up as a baby and have to do it all over again. We open on a literal field of bodies, with Roderick Elmheim standing in the middle. When his son Ash A. Elmheim shows up, Dad is not happy to see him, asking why he's not off leading the army he was assigned to. Ash, looking pretty beat up, spits it right back at him. This was all a setup. He knows Roderick used him and his troops as bait, and his father, with zero hesitation, confirms it. That's what the wingless are good for after all. See, the Elmheims are the continent's strongest family, sworn guardians to the royals. And his dad, Roderick, is the head of the house. Years ago, he found Ash as an infant freezing to death in a blizzard and saved him. So to repay that debt, Ash did everything he was told his entire life. Problem is, in this family, power comes from magical wing crests, tattooed on random part of the body. The more wings, the more op you are. Ash was born with none. His siblings, who all had magic, just called him wingless and treated him like dirt. So while they were flinging spells, he was training his body to the absolute limit, hoping one day his loyalty would finally mean something. That loyalty got him and his entire unit ambushed in the woods. It was a massacre, all planned by his own father. Back in the present, Ash is just crushed. He believed in this man, and Roderick just calls him a tool whose purpose is served. That's the last straw. Ash goes berserk and charges, but his dad just casually blocks the attack. Before he can try again, magic chains wrap around him. It's his brothers showing up to finish the job, still mocking him for being wingless. On his knees and defeated, Ash asks the one question that's left. Why save him as a baby just to throw him away now? Roderick grabs him by the hair and gives him the coldest villain monologue of all time. He never had any use for Ash himself. What he needed was the power of the 7 wings hidden inside his body. A power that came from Ash's mother, who was apparently just a useful incubator for Roderick's grand plan. Before Ash can even process this, one of his brothers runs him through with a sword. As he bleeds out in the snow, he feels the cold take over. And then he wakes up. It's warm and he feels like he's being held. He opens his eyes to see he's a baby again, cradled by a dying woman in a blizzard. Then he hears voices. Men on horseback shouting that they need to find the woman who took the infant. On orders from Duke Roderick. And it all clicks. The blizzard and the baby, Roderick. He's actually regressed. He's back at the very beginning, knowing he'll be captured by the man who will one day kill him. He has only one thought: escape. He starts crawling through the snow, his tiny baby body glowing with some kind of power. Determined to survive this time, he crawls until he can't move anymore, collapsing in the snow just as a man and his young daughter find him. The man, a Viscount Highfried, is stunned. He sees the long trail in the snow and can't believe a tiny baby made it so far on his own. Ash's eye slowly opens and he wonders where on earth he is. Before him, a beautiful infant with fiery red hair appears, surrounded by a soft, ethereal glow and golden feathers. He's captivated. The child reaches for him, and in his dazed state, he can only think that she must be an angel. Suddenly, Ash's eyes snap open. He's in a lavish nursery and he's not alone. A group of young girls peers down at him, one of them the red-haired angel from his dream, announcing he's awake. He's immediately swarmed by his new, overly affectionate sisters. They poke and prod at him, and he can only stare in terrified confusion. A silver-haired girl holds him tight, but Ash, with the mind of a battle-hardened warrior, instinctively struggles to get away. Overwhelmed and panicked, he makes a break for it, jumping off the lap of the girl, and makes a crawl to run off. He pays no mind to the girls calling after him. His only instinct is to flee. As he scrambles down the hallway with the girls in hot pursuit, he can't comprehend what is happening. In his desperation, his eyes flash gold as a powerful aura erupts from his small body. He's flying, propelled into the air by a surge of raw magic, something he, the wingless, was never supposed to possess. But his shock quickly turns to panic. With no idea how to control it, he begins to spin wildly through the air. His flight becomes an uncontrolled plummet, sending him hurtling towards the ground below. He squeezes his eyes shut, bracing for a very short second life. But the impact never comes. He lands softly, caught in the strong arms of his rescuer. The man remarks on what a peculiar child he is. Ash looks up and his heart stops. It's Viscount Highfried, the older brother of the man who destroyed his life, Duke Roderick. He's been brought to the Viscount's estate, the other Elmheim house, a branch of the very family he swore to destroy. Aster recalls what he knows of this man. Viscount Highfried was once a renowned warrior, standing equal to his younger brother Roderick. Together they were known as the Twin Wings, the greatest swordsmen in the kingdom, entrusted with protecting the royal family. But Aster knows a dark future awaits them. In his previous life, the Viscount and his entire house were wiped out in a bloody civil war. This confirms it. He has truly gone back in time. He can only feel a sense of dread. In his attempt to escape the Duke's clutches, he's fallen right into the hands of his brother. Later, held by the gentle Viscountess, the Viscount explains that the baby's powerful magic must have gone out of control. She smiles warmly, unfazed. She says she knew from the start he wasn't just an ordinary baby. She comforts the startled infant, a gesture of maternal love that is entirely foreign to him. The Viscount watches them, noting that this child, despite his size, harbors a truly tremendous power. Viscount reaches for Aster's arm. He gently pushes up the infant's sleeve, revealing a distinct wing-like mark on his skin. The Viscountess gasps, her eyes wide with disbelief. Reflected in the mirror, she sees the unmistakable crest of the legendary 7 wings. Aster stares at the mark on his own body, his mind reeling in horror. He remembers his father's final, cruel words, revealing he only wanted the power of the 7 wings that dwelled within him. The horrifying truth crashes down on him. Roderick didn't save him from the blizzard out of kindness. He was found and raised for the sole purpose of having his power stolen. And after tearing that power from him, Roderick had the gall to brand him wingless. The memory ignites a fire of pure rage in his soul. The Viscountess breaks the tense silence, asking her husband what they should do now. Viscount Hyfried's expression is stern and unreadable. Aster's heart hammers in his tiny chest. He can't let them have this power, he needs it for his revenge. He clenches his tiny fists, bracing himself for another betrayal. But the Viscount's declaration shatters his expectations. He announces that he will take the child in as his own adopted son. Aster can only look up in stunned silence, unable to process this sudden act of grace. Hyfried gently places a hand on his head, his touch surprisingly warm. He tells his wife the boy is still just a fledgling who can't fly on his own yet. He vows to take responsibility and raise him until the day he can soar of his own will. A feeling Aster has never known before blooms in his chest. Is this acceptance? The touching moment is interrupted as their daughters come tumbling into the room, their eavesdropping spot revealed. They pick themselves up, sheepishly admitting they were just worried about their new little brother. The Hyfried family is now complete, gathering around its newest, most mysterious member. One of the girls excitedly asks what his name will be. The Viscountess looks down at the child in her arms with a loving smile. Holding him up to the bright, full moon, she christens him Aster, the name of a new star born into our family. 10 years fly by, a grand carriage pulls up to an even grander ducal estate. Viscount Hyfried is greeted, and following him out of the carriage is a handsome, self-assured 10-year-old boy. This is Aster. He gallantly helps his sister Ulfin down from the carriage. The once tiny children have grown into graceful young nobles, ready to face the world. They have arrived at the sword dance gathering. This is an annual event hosted by the Duke's house, a mandatory social gathering for all noble warrior families. But it's more than just a party. It's a brutal competition where houses display their strength through their young swordsmen. It's a place where reputations are forged and shattered in the heat of a duel. As the Hyfried family makes their way towards the entrance, they are met with whispers and looks of disdain. The other nobles sneer at the declining Viscount house, openly mocking them for adopting a boy of unknown origins. They see Aster as nothing more than an embarrassment, a stain on the prestigious Elmheim name. Aster stands before the palace gates, his expression calm and unbothered. Ulfin leans in, telling him not to let their words get to him. She clenches her fist in frustration, warning him that this is a place where the weak are crushed without mercy, a grim reminder of their family's current precarious position. Viscount Hyfried stands beside them, gazing up at the imposing structure. He turns to Aster and asks if he's disappointed by their cold reception. Aster looks back at his adoptive father, a sharp, predatory grin spreading across his face. He declares that this kind of cold shoulder suits him just fine. Earning a hearty laugh from the Viscount, Aster stares at the palace, a place that holds only bitter memories. In his past life, this was the stage for his most humiliating defeat. But he is no longer the wingless disgrace. With the power of the 7 wings now his to command, everything is different. His golden eyes narrow with unbreakable resolve. High above, he spots them. His 2 former brothers, the ones who cut him down in the snow, watch his arrival from a window. Aster's face remains a mask of cold indifference. He turns away from the window and walks forward, flanked by the only family that ever truly cared for him. With a fire of vengeance burning in his eyes, he strides towards the entrance, ready to make his debut. This is an age where knights reign supreme, an era defined by grand duels held in sprawling arenas. Knights were expected to possess both raw power and splendid fame. Their strength was demonstrated through their skill and swordsmanship, and their splendor was measured by the reputation of their house. This was a world where a single duel could make or break a family's name. The ultimate proof of both power and fame was the absolute family symbol. The wing crest, a magical sigil that manifested in the bodies of the truly gifted, enhancing their power. With this power, a swordsman could effortlessly cleave through their opponent's defense and stand victorious, earning glory for themselves and their lineage. This crest was everything. It was the mark of a true warrior, the ultimate source of a family's pride and power. Inside the Grand Ducal estate, Aster, Ulfin, and their father take in the intimidating atmosphere. Ulfin notes that it's no wonder her other sisters refused to come, given the tense and hostile environment. Aster's gaze is cold and distant, haunted by the sneering faces of those who scorned him in his past life. He's thrown back into a painful memory, the day of his ultimate humiliation, where he was defeated and broken in the pouring rain. His sister Ulfin snaps him out of his reverie, asking if he's nervous since it's his first sword dance gathering. Aster, however, is completely unfazed. He coolly replies that he's not nervous at all. In fact, he says with a knowing smirk it feels almost nostalgic. Ulfin can only look on in confusion, bewildered by his calm demeanor. Viscount Hyfried announces he must attend a conference for a bit, leaving the 2 siblings on their own. He asks Aster to look after Ulfin, which earns a protest from the red-haired girl, who reminds her father she's a year older. The Viscount simply pats Aster on the shoulder, telling him to use the opportunity to make some connections. But he leans in with a final serious warning. Whatever he does, he must not let anyone find out about the power of the 7 wings. As their father walks away, the siblings are left to navigate the social battlefield alone. Aster immediately feels the hostile stares of the other nobles, their contempt a palpable force in the air. He thinks to himself that with such an openly unwelcoming atmosphere, making any real connections is completely out of the question. His eyes narrow with determination. He has other plans. Ulfin notices him start to walk away and asks where he's going. With a glint in his eye, Aster simply states that he's going to make some friends. He strides purposefully down the hall, leaving his sister behind. His destination is a lounge where a group of young nobles are relaxing, led by a cocky red-haired boy lounging on the sofa. Aster approaches and the boy Dariz looks up, smugly asking who he is. Aster introduces himself with a polite yet chilling smile, greeting his brother Dariz. He formally presents himself as Aster F. Elmheim, their younger brother. He adds that he saw them from outside and just had to come say hello. Dariz looks back at Aster with a cold, appraising stare. Another boy, Grion, chimes in, identifying Aster as the adopted kid that the Viscount's house picked up. Dariz's expression turns into a deranged sneer, so that's why this commoner has the nerve to call himself an F, a member of the main family. Aster's mind flashes back to these two, Dariz and Grion, both heirs of the Elmheim house, and the very two who struck him down and left him for dead in his past life. He internally scoffs. Back then they seemed so terrifyingly powerful. But now, seeing them like this, they just look like a bunch of arrogant children playing pretend. A flicker of golden light shines in Aster's eyes as he prepares to make his move. Ulfin, having followed him, rushes to his side, telling him it's time to go back now that he said his hellos. But it's too late, she's already been spotted. Dariz's attention immediately shifts to her, his tone dripping with mockery as he asks if she isn't hiding behind her daddy today. He then commands her to come over and entertain them, declaring it an order from the main house. Ulfin stands her ground, her expression turning to stone. With fire in her eyes, she flatly refuses. She declares that there is no master-servant relationship between the main house and a branch family, but as she turns to leave, Aster calls out to her to wait. His expression is calm, but his eyes hold a deep, simmering coldness. Dariz isn't finished. He sneers that their father, a so-called knight, failed to protect the king, and as punishment had his arm cut off by his own younger brother, Duke Roderick. The words cut deep and Ulfin flinches, her face a mask of pain and humiliation. Dariz twists the knife, saying he's so glad he doesn't have that loser's blood running through his veins. That's the last straw for Ulfin. She screams at him to take it back. Dariz spits out some wine on Ulfin's face. Drenching her wet, he continues his vile tirade, mocking the Viscount for only having useless daughters who can't even inherit the title, and calling Ulfin a disappointment. This isn't a ball, he says with a twisted grin. He grabs a full glass of wine from a nearby tray. He tells her next time she should wear rags so she won't mind getting wet. And with that, he leaving her shamed and humiliated in front of everyone. Standing nearby, Aster watches this unfold. He had been worried on the way here, worried that after 10 years of peace, seeing the faces of his tormentors might not spark any anger in him at all. But as he watches his sister tremble, a single tear mixed with wine streaking down her face, he's glad to be proven wrong. He calls out to Dariz, his voice dangerously calm, then tosses him a wine bottle which he took from the nearby standers. Dariz catches it perfectly, not spilling a single drop. He thinks Dariz and his friends are still the same pieces of trash he remembers. In a flash, Aster is on him, shattering the bottle over Dariz's head with a sickening crunch. Wine and blood explode everywhere as Dariz cries out in shock and pain. Aster stands over the sputtering noble, his sword now drawn, its tip dripping with the wine. He calmly licks a drop of the liquid from his thumb. "Oh, just grape juice," he remarks with a predatory smile that doesn't reach his eyes. He adds that it's the perfect drink for little baby nobles, don't you think? The scene flashes back 3 years to a time when Aster's power went berserk. His father's voice echoes in his mind, pleading with him to control his immense power. One of his younger sisters cries out in terror, holding another unconscious sibling. Ulfin can be seen in the background, yelling at them to get a grip, but the raw, untamed power emanating from a younger Aster is overwhelming. Even Viscount Hyfried, a seasoned knight, was taken aback by the sheer destructive potential of the Seven Wings, questioning if it could ever truly be controlled. He wondered if he and his son, working together, could ever hope to tame this overwhelming force, as a young Aster struggled just to contain it. Back in the present, Viscount Hyfried's conference is abruptly interrupted by a panicked guard with terrible news. The Viscount, annoyed, demands to know what could possibly be so important as to disturb a meeting of the kingdom's most powerful nobles. The guard stammers that the sons of the Elmheim main and branch families are currently engaged in a duel. The news hits like a thunderclap. Both Viscount Hyfried and the imposing head of the main family, Duke Roderick, are stunned by the revelation. Without a second thought, the Viscount springs from his chair, his coat flaring as he rushes out of the room. He finds a frantic Ulfin who is terrified for her brother's safety. He demands to know what happened. A burly, brutish-looking noble points towards the commotion with a malicious grin, telling them to see for themselves. Down below, in the center of a large crowd, Aster and Dariz are locked in combat, a spectacle the noble mockingly calls a fight between the great Elmheim brothers. Watching from the balcony, the brutish noble remarks that a spectacle like this doesn't happen every day, clearly enjoying the chaos. Other nobles watch the duel with a mixture of concern and morbid curiosity, the tension in the hall growing thicker by the second. The brutish noble smirks, his eyes glowing with anticipation. He thinks to himself that depending on how this ends, the sword dance gathering is about to get very ugly. In the arena, Dariz is brimming with arrogance. He sneers at the fool from a mere branch family who dared to challenge the Duke's house. Calling Aster a stray mutt, he activates his wing crest. The crowd gasps in awe. Dries possesses a powerful four-wing crest, a mark of exceptional talent. The spectators murmur that the Duke's son is, as expected, on a completely different level. Dries smugly demands that Aster reveal his own crest. He continues to taunt Aster, asking if he's too embarrassed to show his own, likely pathetic, crest after seeing his magnificent four wings. Aster just smirks back, his golden eyes glinting. He calmly agrees that showing off a mere pattern so proudly is indeed embarrassing, and he would never do something so tacky. The casual dismissal infuriates Dries, whose smug expression twists into a mask of pure rage. Ignoring the taunts, Aster sets his condition. If he wins, Dries must apologize to his sister. Dries scoffs and adds his own stake. If he wins, Aster becomes his dog. With the terms set, Dries lunges forward with a manic cry, vowing to work his new pet to the bone. Dries unleashes a flurry of attacks, which Aster blocks, but is pushed back by the force of the blow. Dries, channeling the power of his crest, boasts that this is the true power of a crest bearer, something a stray like Aster could never understand. Yet when the supercharged attack connects, Aster blocks it with a single hand. From the balcony, Ulfin cries out her brother's name, unable to believe what she's seeing. The brutish noble watching nearby notes with a critical eye that Dries' swordsmanship is clumsy and unrefined. He thinks to himself that normally such poor skill wouldn't matter in a duel like this. The true advantage of a crest bearer is the overwhelming magic that can cover any gap in skill, if a single wing holds the power of a candle. Then Dries' four-wing crest is like a roaring explosion. He unleashes a devastating wave of attacks, confident his raw power will be enough to crush Aster. He mockingly asks Aster where all his earlier bravado has gone, seeing him only defending. He screams at Aster to show him his true power, demanding to know if all his talk was just an empty bluff. Believing he has Aster completely cornered, Dries musters all his strength for one final, crushing blow. A blonde noble watching from the side smirks, declaring that the match has just been decided. Their swords meet in a blinding flash of red and gold energy. But it's Dries whose face twists in shock. He's the one being pushed back, unable to believe the strength behind Aster's block. Aster looks at him with utter contempt, coolly telling his cousin that he talks too much. With a surge of power, Aster effortlessly breaks Dries' stance, sending him stumbling backward across the arena floor. A calm, menacing golden aura now swirls around Aster as he stands completely unfazed. He thinks to himself that he has spent the last 10 years doing nothing but learning to control his magic, all for the chance to get his revenge. The look in his eyes is one of a predator who has finally cornered his prey after a very long hunt. He unleashes a counterattack of his own, his golden aura exploding outwards and completely overwhelming Dries' red energy. The force of the blow is so immense that it drives the proud heir of the Duke's house to his knees. Grion and the other lackeys watch in horror, unable to comprehend that Dries is being pushed back. Aster presses his advantage, his aura now tinged with a strange green energy, completely dominating his opponent. Dries sputters in disbelief, desperately screaming that he has four wings, that this shouldn't be possible. The onlooking nobles are shocked, murmuring that they never thought the declining branch family of Elmheim could produce such a monster. But Aster isn't listening. His entire being is focused on one thing, fulfilling the vow of vengeance he made 10 years ago. Watching from above, Viscount Hyfried's expression is grim. He can tell this is bad, that Aster's control might be slipping. Dries tries to fend off the next attack, but the difference in their strength, skill, and sheer willpower is now painfully obvious. A memory flashes through Aster's mind, the image of Dries severing his arm in his past life. That painful memory fuels his rage, and his golden aura flares, surging with even greater intensity. Dries chokes under the immense pressure, desperately pleading for Aster to stop. From the balcony, his family screams his name, afraid that in his rage he'll deliver a fatal blow. But their cries are drowned out by the explosion of raw power, as Aster brings his sword down for the final strike. Even the brutish noble who had been enjoying the show now looks on with a grim expression, realizing this has gone too far. Aster's attack comes to a screeching halt, his blade buried deep in the stone floor just inches from his cousin's throat. The proud Dries is left trembling on the ground, a dark stain spreading across his trousers. He has wet himself from pure terror. Looking down at the pathetic sight, Aster coldly throws Dries' earlier insult back in his face, telling him he should wear rags next time so he won't mind getting wet. Sheathing his sword, Aster turns away. He looks up at his family and thinks to himself that he is no longer the weak, wingless ash he once was. Ulfin stares down at him, her face a mixture of shock, relief, and overwhelming pride for her younger brother. A small, satisfied smile touches Aster's lips. This small taste of revenge is enough to clear his head for now. But his moment of peace is shattered as his eyes widen in alarm, sensing a new, overwhelming presence. A terrifyingly powerful and malevolent red aura suddenly floods the entire hall, originating from the grand staircase. Aster's expression turns grim as he realizes who it is. He can only utter a single word. Duke Roderick, his eyes glowing with red light, stands there in all his terrifying glory. The head of the main family, the architect of Aster's past misery, and the man who killed him has finally appeared. The name escapes Aster's lips, a whisper filled with a lifetime of hatred and dread: Roderick. The hall falls into a stunned silence. The youngest son of the Viscount house has just defeated the third son of the main house, but as the nobles murmur amongst themselves, they realize this victory has only made things worse. A heavy, suffocating presence descends from the grand staircase as Duke Roderick makes his deliberate approach. Aster stands his ground, his calm expression hardening as he faces the man who killed him in his past life. Dries, however, looks up from the floor with a deranged grin, ecstatic that his father has arrived to put this mud in his place. The two finally stand face to face, the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. Duke Roderick glares down. Aster's resolve doesn't waver for an instant. Seeing his savior, Dries begins to crawl pathetically towards his father. He scrambles to his feet and desperately grabs onto the Duke's leg, crying out for his father's help. Pointing an accusatory finger, he begs the Duke to punish the filthy mutt from the Branch family who dared to defy him. But Roderick's burning gaze isn't fixed on Aster. His rage is directed elsewhere. With a surge of power, he slams his sword into Dries' hand, slamming it into the stone floor, shattering it with the force of his anger. Dries' face twists in terror. His lackeys watch in abject horror, unable to comprehend what is happening. Grian is now sweating, the situation having spiraled far beyond their expectations. Looming over his son, Roderick icily asks why the one who lost the duel is grinning like an idiot, and if he understands that he has just dragged the family name through the mud. From the balcony, Viscount Hyfried screams his brother's name, telling him to stop. But Roderick ignores him, raising his greatsword and declaring that one who cannot even avenge himself has no right to wield a sword. It's clear he intends to cripple his own son as punishment for this humiliation. But before the blow can land, Aster steps in, raising his own sword to intervene. Dries, still on the floor, looks up in confusion from between Aster's legs. Aster calmly tells his uncle that the punishment can wait, because his cousin still hasn't apologized to his sister. Enraged by this insolence, Roderick surrounds himself in a vortex of purple energy, sneering at the orphan who dares think he's a true Elmheim. Aster doesn't flinch. He declares that he is the Viscount's son and that his father taught him all about a knight's pride in the weight of a house. Roderick looks up at his brother on the balcony, then back down at the boy. He snarls that as a member of the Viscount's house, Aster has needlessly damaged the reputation of the main family, the pinnacle of the kingdom's knights. The onlooking nobles murmur that this is no mere children's quarrel. The stakes have become dangerously high for everyone involved. One noble recalls a time when Viscount Hyfried himself offered an arm as the price for his disloyalty. This is a matter of pride and power where a single misstep could spell ruin. With his blade pressed against Aster's neck, Roderick demands to know what price he will offer for his transgression. Aster coolly replies that with all due respect, this was not a simple quarrel. It was a legitimate duel, and he was simply answering the insults levied against the Viscount's house with his sword. Roderick's eyes narrow, his patience wearing thin. Then Aster throws the Duke's own words back in his face, reminding him of his creed. One who cannot even avenge himself has no right to wield a sword. He finishes by declaring he has no intention of giving up even a single finger. Up on the balcony, even the brutish noble is taken aback by the boy's sheer audacity. Meanwhile, Finn is terrified. Another noble laughs in disbelief, marveling that a mere 10-year-old could possess such unshakable nerve. Roderick's expression shifts. The pure rage gives way to a cold, calculating look. He slowly sheathes his sword, a single phrase escaping his lips, "I see." He then challenges Aster directly, telling the boy to draw his sword. Without hesitation, Aster takes his stance, ready for whatever the Duke might throw at him. But even he is not prepared for the Duke's terrifying speed. In a flash of movement, Roderick lunges, his sword aimed straight for the boy's heart. Ulfin screams in terror, unable to watch. Viscount Hyfried roars his brother's name, his face a mask of fury and desperation. Without a second's thought, the Viscount leaps from the balcony, soaring through the air to protect his son. He attacks Roderick, which Roderick single-handedly blocks. Viscount lands on the ground after failed attack, and rushes to his son's side. The Viscount's eyes are filled with worry as he looks for Aster. But the boy is still standing, bloodied and battered, but unbroken and defiant. His golden eyes, though filled with pain, burn with an unyielding fighting spirit. Roderick looks on for a moment, his expression unreadable, before making his decision. He turns his back and walks away, leaving the entire hall in stunned silence. Viscount Hyfried rushes to his son's side, catching him as he finally stumbles, leaning against his father. Blood-soaked Aster flashes a triumphant grin, telling him he protected his promise and everything else. The Viscount's heart swells with pride. He looks down at his son and tells him that he was magnificent. As Roderick ascends the stairs, the humiliated Dries trailing behind, the other nobles begin to process what they've just witnessed. The brutish noble remarks to his companion that Roderick was being rather childish, losing his temper over a boy. His friend agrees, saying it was a decent compromise to save face for the main house. They note that the boy Aster made bold declarations against the Duke and not only survived, but stood his ground. For a young noble, this was the most spectacular social debut imaginable. A new rising star had just been born. But Roderick sees something more. He senses that the age of upheaval is coming soon, a storm great enough to split the world. For now, however, the storm has passed. Ulfin and the Viscount rush to Aster's side, their family reunited and their honor defended. After the intense confrontation with Duke Roderick, Aster wastes no time, throwing himself back into his rigorous training. His fellow knights of the Viscount's house watch from the sidelines, astounded by his progress. In a fierce sparring match, Aster unleashes a powerful blow, shattering his opponent's wooden sword and ending the duel in an instant. The defeated knight can only grin in admiration, calling his young master's performance magnificent. Aster, however, remains focused, his golden eyes already searching for his next challenge. The watching knights murmur amongst themselves, commenting on how terrifyingly skilled the 10-year-old has become. They note he's been training even harder since the sword dance gathering, realizing the event was a major catalyst for his growth. The story of him defeating Duke Roderick's son has also spread, bringing a sense of satisfaction to the branch house that has long been overshadowed by the main family. Aster reflects on the gathering, his mind replaying the events. He knows he made a powerful statement that day. His display of strength was a calculated move to silence those who looked down on the Viscount's house. But his ultimate goal remains unchanged, to deal with the main Elmheim family and the man who leads it, Duke Roderick. He had wanted to truly test the limits of his power at the gathering, to see how he stacked up against the kingdom's strongest. However, the brief clash with Roderick showed him the harsh reality. As he is now, he stands no chance against the Duke's overwhelming power. Aster knows that the wing crests, the measure of a person's magical ability, are merely a sign of potential. Innate power is useless if it cannot be controlled, a lesson he learned the hard way when he nearly harmed his own sister. Frustration boils within him. He still can't draw out the full power of his 7 wings, the very gift that sets him apart. He yearns for an opportunity, a tool, anything that would allow him to unleash his true strength without the fear of losing control. Channeling this frustration, Aster returns to the training yard with renewed ferocity. He moves like a whirlwind, his wooden sword a blur as he engages multiple opponents at once. One by one, the knights fall, unable to keep up with his speed and precision. Finally, standing alone amidst a field of his defeated comrades, Aster calls out for the next challenger, his thirst for strength unquenched. A voice cuts, remarking that Aster truly doesn't know the meaning of holding back. It's his sister Ulfin who has come to tell him their father has summoned him. Putting his training on hold, Aster agrees to go immediately. He walks towards her, navigating the aftermath of his intense session. As he gets closer, he notices something unusual about his sister's attire. She's dressed in practical training clothes, a far cry from her usual dresses. Aster points this out, remembering she used to complain that such outfits weren't cute. Ulfin explains with a newfound maturity that watching him strive so hard made her realize she couldn't afford to remain complacent either. Aster is taken aback, seeing a new fire in his sister's eyes. With a determined smile, she grabs a practice sword and tells him to be her sparring partner when he gets back. A warm smile spreads across Aster's face as he happily accepts her challenge. It's a promise of a new dynamic between the siblings, one built on mutual growth and strength. Later, Aster arrives at the door to his father's study and knocks politely. He enters the grand office, where Viscount Hyfried sits waiting with an uncharacteristically solemn expression. The Viscount tells him to have a seat, and the heavy atmosphere immediately puts Aster on edge. As Aster sits, his father begins, his voice laced with gravity. The Viscount reminds Aster that it has been 10 years since he was welcomed into their family as a son. He had planned to wait until Aster was older, but circumstances have changed. He places a small velvet cushion on the desk between them. Resting on the cushion is a magnificent ring, adorned with a large crimson jewel shimmering in the sunlight. The Viscount declares that this is the proof of the next head of house, and he formally asks Aster to inherit the Viscount's title and responsibilities. Aster is completely stunned, the sudden proposal leaving him speechless. His father continues, explaining the delicate political position of their house as a branch of the powerful Elmheim family. They have a territory and its people to protect. He stresses that they can no longer afford to leave the matter of succession undecided, especially with the growing tensions. Aster's first concern is for his family. He asks if his sisters are okay with this sudden decision. The Viscount informs him that his other sisters, Marfa and Kudo, are due to return from night school in 3 days, and he plans to make the official announcement then. Images of his 2 oldie sisters flash through Aster's mind. He knows this will not be received well, anticipating that Sister Kudo in particular will be furious at the news. His father lets out a weary sigh, acknowledging Kudo's deep-seated resentment of Aster, born from jealousy of his gender and his 7-winged crest. At that moment, Aster rises from his chair, his expression firm as he respectfully declines the offer. He insists that he cannot accept the position. He still can't fully control his own immense magic. He painfully recalls the incident where he nearly killed his own sister, branding himself an immature fool who has no right to lead, let alone convince his rightfully angry sister. Viscount Hyfried simply watches him, a faint, knowing smile on his face. He remarks that he's often wondered if Aster was truly a child at all. He reveals that the ring was originally intended as a simple reward for his achievements at the sword dance gathering. But now, seeing Aster's true concerns and his deep-seated desire for control, the Viscount believes he has a much more fitting gift. He slides a long, polished wooden case across the desk, stopping it right in front of Aster. Aster's eyes widen, fixed on the box, a surge of anticipation running through him. The Viscount opens the case, revealing the hilt of a masterfully crafted sword. He introduces it as the legendary magic sword Graham, a unique blade capable of controlling the 7 wings' power, the magic devouring sword. The Viscount leads his son deep into the woods, to a secluded spot far from the manor. Aster questions the need for such secrecy, suggesting the training hall would have been sufficient for a simple test. His father grimaces, reminding him that simple is rarely the case with Aster's power, flashing back to all the collateral damage from his previous training sessions. With that settled, the Viscount reveals the real reason they came, the legendary magic sword Graham, an heirloom of the Elmheim main family. He clenches the sword wrap with his teeth and opens it, explaining with some difficulty that he had it brought from the main house specifically for Aster. Aster's eyes widen in shock and disbelief. This is a treasure reserved only for the direct heir of the Duke. He stares at the object, which is more of a hilt than a sword, completely lacking a blade. But the Viscount quickly demonstrates its true nature. By channeling his own magic into the hilt, a ferocious blade of pure red energy erupts into existence. He explains that Graham is a blade of potential, a weapon completed only by the magic of its wielder. With a single, effortless swing, he carves a massive trench through the forest floor, showcasing the sword's devastating power. The vortex of energy rips through the clearing, a testament to the might a skilled user can command. However, the Viscount offers a stern warning. For anyone with insufficient magic, Graham becomes a cursed blade that will drain its user completely dry. He then offers the legendary weapon to Aster, challenging him to try it for himself. Aster accepts, his hands closing around the hilt that holds the key to controlling his power. As he grips the sword, he begins to channel his magic, his own immense golden aura flaring to life around him. But the power is overwhelming. The sword seems to have a will of its own, drawing out his magic in a violent, uncontrolled torrent. The feedback is immediate. He can feel his magic being pulled into the hilt, concentrating into a single point. Suddenly, a massive pillar of red and white light erupts from the sword, rocketing high into the sky. Back at the manor, the knights are startled by the phenomenon. One panics, wondering if a comet just crashed nearby. His comrade corrects him, pointing out that the light shot up into the sky, not down. Ulfin, watching, knows exactly who is responsible for the commotion. It's definitely Aster. Meanwhile, back in the woods, Aster stares at the bladeless sword in awe, remarking on its incredible power. But the Viscount is quick to correct him, his expression a mix of pride and concern. He tells his son that the extraordinary thing isn't the sword, but Aster's own power that fuels it. With a solemn gaze, Aster looks on, a bead of sweat tracing its way down his temple. His father continues, reminding him that in the entire long history of the Elmheim family, not a single person has ever been born with a seven-winged crest. If he can master this unprecedented power, he will become a swordsman who surpasses even six-winged warriors like the Viscount himself and Duke Roderick. The thought of surpassing the man who stands at the apex of the kingdom, his greatest obstacle, fills Aster with a cold, burning resolve. But his father's lesson isn't over. He grips the hilt of the now dormant sword, his expression turning grim. He warns Aster that power as great as his inevitably breeds conflict. Once the world learns of his true potential, he will become a target. Some will envy him, others will resent him. He will be seen as a tool to be used by those with ambition, and a threat to be eliminated by those who fear him. The Viscount's voice is low and serious. To avoid a future filled with regret and powerlessness, Aster must seize this chance and grow stronger, starting right now. He extends his hand, a silent offer of support and guidance on this difficult path. Aster meets his father's gaze, his own determination solidifying, and clasps his hand firmly. With newfound conviction, he thanks his father, vowing that he will master his seven wings and never again live the miserable, powerless life he endured in his past. 3 days pass, and the day his other sisters are set to return finally arrives. The Viscount, his wife, and Ulfin gather in the main hall to welcome home Marfa and Kudo from the Knight Academy. The 2 older sisters step into the hall. Marfa, the eldest, is serene and elegant, while Kudo, the second eldest, is brash and fiery. Kudo strikes a pose, clearing her throat to get everyone's attention. With a blindingly bright smile, she throws her arms wide, dramatically demanding a welcome home hug from her dear little sisters. But her grand gesture is met with rejection as the 2 youngest girls run right past her, straight into the arms of the gentle Marfa. Kudo is left standing alone in the middle of the grand hall, utterly dumbfounded. The little ones explain that they avoided her because Sister Kudo always messes up their hair with her rough hugs. Kudo folds her arms, pouting as she mutters that she has perfectly mastered knightly etiquette and would never be so improper. She quickly recovers her boisterous demeanor, turning her attention to Ulfin instead. Before Ulfin can react, Kudo traps her in an inescapable, hair-ruffling headlock of affection. Ulfin struggles in her sister's iron grip, her cry of protest muffled. Amidst the chaotic reunion, the graceful Marfa looks around, noticing someone is missing. She asks where Aster is. The Viscount and his wife share a weary look, knowing this is a sore subject for their second daughter. As expected, Kudo's playful expression immediately darkens at the mere mention of Aster's name. Miles away, the source of her irritation is busy training. A massive blast of red magic erupts from Graham as Aster struggles to control it. He pants heavily, the effort of maintaining the magic blade pushing him to his limits. Sweat pours down his face as he admits he can't do it. He can create the blade, but suppressing its wild energy takes everything he has. He can barely hold the volatile magic in check, the red aura crackling violently around his arm. He stands amidst the destruction from his training, wondering how his father wields the same power so effortlessly. Just then, a familiar, condescending voice cuts through the clearing. Kudo has found him. He turns, surprised to see her. He hadn't even realized she was back. She tusks at him, chiding him for not even bothering to greet his big sister upon her return. With a smirk, she floats down, sarcastically asking if he thinks he's so special now that his family doesn't even matter to him. Aster is taken aback by her hostility, stammering a reply. She continues her verbal assault, mentioning that the entire night school was buzzing with news of his performance at the sword dance gathering. He tries to deflect, praising her own achievements and mentioning the prestigious honor medal she received, a feat no other trainee accomplished. She dismisses the compliment, stating it's the bare minimum required for her to inherit their father's position. Her green eyes narrow with suspicion and resentment. She heard he turned down the position of heir and demands to know if it was out of pity for her. Aster is flustered by the accusation, his phantom self sweating bullets behind him as he tries to explain. He insists it wasn't his intention, claiming he just doesn't feel qualified for the responsibility yet. Kyudo's expression softens for a moment, a flicker of disappointment crossing her face. She turns away, muttering how cruel both he and their father are for toying with her dream of becoming the head of the house. Aster watches her leave, confused by her sudden mood swing. But her retreat was a feint. In a flash, she pivots and unleashes a powerful slash of her own. Her magic-infused blade cleaves through the trunk of a massive tree, sending it toppling right towards him. Aster leaps back just in time, the tree crashing down where he stood moments before. He yells out in shock, asking what she thinks she's doing with such a reckless, sudden attack. Kyudo lands gracefully, a predatory grin spreading across her face as she faces her little brother. She declares that it's time for his big sister to personally test the skills he's so proud of. Aster panics, protesting that he can't fight because he hasn't fully mastered his new sword yet. Kyudo scoffs at his excuse, asking if he thinks an enemy on the battlefield would care about his readiness. The word enemy strikes a chord with Aster, his playful demeanor vanishing instantly. Kyudo readies her stance, reminding him of a knight's creed, to always be ready for battle. She warns him not to hold back because she certainly won't. She unleashes another powerful slash, carving a deep gouge in the earth as she closes the distance. Aster realizes this is no joke. He's already struggling just to keep Graham's power from running rampant. He knows he has no choice. If he doesn't fight back seriously, his sister is fully prepared to kill him right here. With a desperate roar, he forces his magic into the sword, unleashing a torrent of crimson energy to meet her assault. The sibling rivalry explodes, their powerful slashes devastating the surrounding forest. Kyudo presses the attack, a wild grin on her face as she tests her brother's limits. Aster grits his teeth, barely holding back her assault with the unstable power of the magic sword Graham. With a crazed look, Kyudo admits his sword skills have improved since her time at the Knight Academy. However, she scoffs at his weapon, calling it a pathetic excuse for a sword. She screams that his biggest failing is his complete lack of control over his own magic. The sheer force of her attack sends Aster skidding backward across the clearing. Catching his breath, he mutters that his older sister truly doesn't know how to hold back. His mind flashes back, recalling that she has always been this way. He remembers her constant aggression, fueled by her belief that he was unfairly favored as the only male heir. Being born with a superior wing crest only made him a bigger target for her resentment. She was a storm of a sister, always ready to pick a fight over what she perceived as injustice. Even as a child, Aster had to face her head-on. He thinks to himself that honestly, she has always been his natural enemy. They clash again, their magical blades creating a maelstrom of destructive energy. Kyudo's face contorts with rage and determination. She roars that someone with such poor control is not fit to become the next head of the house. Meanwhile, back at the manor, their sister Manhwa watches the distant battle with growing concern. She asks their father if he's certain it's wise to leave them to their own devices. She voices her fear that this fight could easily end in tragedy. He reassures Manhwa that the two are simply good rivals, pushing each other to grow stronger. While they might be reckless, he is confident they won't let things go too far. Manhwa can only hope that her father's assessment is correct. Changing the subject, she questions the true reason for their summons back from the academy. She suspects it's more than just a talk about succession, and her father confirms it. He reaches into his desk, retrieving something from a wooden box. Manhwa's eyes widen in shock at what he pulls out. It's a formal summons from the Elmheim main house, sealed with their official crest. The Viscount explains grimly that the elders of the Main family wish to meet their grandchildren. Manhwa immediately understands the gravity of the summons, calling it a serious matter. Her father agrees, his expression dark, admitting that they may very well lose Aster. Back in the forest, the intense duel continues without pause. Aster yells at his sister, reminding her that he already turned down the position of successor. Kyudo screams back that his rejection is exactly what infuriates her so much. She gathers her strength for a powerful downward strike. Aster blocks, the impact feeling like he's trying to stop a troll swinging a giant hammer. He struggles under the immense pressure of her attack. With a skillful parry, Aster deflects her blade, creating a momentary opening. But Kyudo is relentless, accusing him of trying to run away as he repositions. She continues her fierce assault, leaving him no room to breathe. Aster stumbles back, coughing up blood from the sheer brute strength of her attacks. Kyudo lectures him, stating that merely swinging a sword makes him a third-rate fighter. Being able to handle magic only elevates him to second-rate. She tells him that only by mastering both can he ever hope to be considered first-rate. Looking down on him, she calls him a bitter disappointment. She explains that the difference in their wing crests represents the gap in the amount of magic they can handle. With 5 wings to his 7, she should theoretically be 2 full tiers of power beneath him. Yet he avoids a direct confrontation of strength, resorting to his old habit of running. She mockingly asks if he truly has so little faith in his own abilities. With a cruel smirk, she brings up the past, asking if he's afraid of losing control again, just like 3 years ago. Her words hit their mark and Aster is left stunned, questioning if he is indeed afraid. Afraid of the true power contained within his 7 wings. He stands denying it, but begins to wonder if he's been unconsciously limiting himself. He theorizes that Graham's instability might be because he's been suppressing his magic too forcefully. Kyudo's voice drips with jealousy as she tells him he was born with everything she ever craved. She powers up, vowing that she won't let him squander his good fortune on arrogance. With a roar, she demands he hand over everything he has to her and unleashes her ultimate attack. A massive explosion erupts as Aster meets her attack head-on, no longer giving ground. Kyudo is stunned that he managed to repel her full-force strike. A confident smirk plays on Aster's lips as he thanks her for waking him up. He charges forward, but Kyudo notices his sword has no blade. She momentarily thinks he's out of magic, but quickly dismisses the impossible thought. Aster reveals the secret of his power. His 7 wings grant him an inexhaustible well of magic. While he can't fully control it yet, for one brief instant, he can focus all that raw energy into a single point of impact. Kyudo smirks, dismissing his strategy as a half-baked plan. But Aster's resolve is absolute. He didn't get this second life just to throw it away. The 7-wing crest on his back flares with a brilliant red light, a testament to his power. This power, his family, the sword, they are all things he could never obtain in his previous life, no matter how hard he struggled. Kyudo is momentarily confused by his strange talk of a second life. But it's too late. With a powerful cry, Aster unleashes his magic. A massive, unstable blade of pure crimson energy erupts from Graham, crackling with untamed power. In a shocking twist, the energy blade vanishes just an instant before it connects with Kyudo's sword. Aster's eyes glow with a dark intensity as he announces that he won't be holding back any longer. Then he slashes at her sister with the sword. Kyudo's eyes snap open, the haze of unconsciousness quickly replaced by confusion. She finds herself not on the battlefield, but in the familiar comfort of her own sunlit room. A voice cuts through her thoughts, and she looks up to see her sister Marfa. Marfa greets her with a gentle smile, noting that she's finally awake after a long rest. Jolting upright, Kyudo's mind races back to the duel. She frantically asks what happened with her match against Aster. Marfa calmly explains that Aster carried her all the way back to the manor after their fight concluded. With a knowing look, Marfa relays Aster's cover story, that Kyudo must have been exhausted from her journey and simply fell asleep. But Kyudo isn't buying it. She sits pensively, her sword resting beside her, knowing that's not how things ended. Her mind flashes back to the final, terrifying moments of their clash. She vividly remembers believing Aster was about to deliver the final blow. But at the last possible second, he had dispelled the massive magic blade, letting only the harmless residual energy wash over her. Though he held back the lethal force, he still followed through with the motion of the slash. She reasons that, of course, her little brother would never actually kill her. Yet the memory of his cold, glowing eyes sends a shiver down her spine. For one heart-stopping moment, she truly believed he was capable of it. A small smile plays on her lips, that infuriating little brother acting so much bigger and stronger than he is. Fueled by a renewed fighting spirit, she grabs her sword. She storms out of bed, roaring that she refuses to accept such an anticlimactic end to their fight and demands a rematch. But as she charges out, Marfa calmly informs her that Aster has already left. Kyudo freezes, the news catching her completely off guard. Marfa explains that Aster was summoned by the main house and departed with their father just a short while ago. The look on Kyudo's face says it all. She's in utter shock, having been kept completely in the dark. She erupts in frustration, screaming that no one bothered to tell her something so important. Meanwhile, a carriage is already making its way from the estate. Inside, Aster sits quietly, his expression unreadable as he heads toward an uncertain future. His father breaks the silence, explaining that their destination is a meeting with the shadowy elders of the Elmheim family. These aren't just any old nobles. They are the former heads and influential figures who rule the clan from behind the scenes, known as the Fixers. The Viscount finds it strange that these elders, who have ignored Aster since his adoption, are suddenly taking an interest in him. Aster, however, isn't surprised. He correctly guesses that this summons is a direct result of the incident at the Sword Dance gathering. He cryptically mentions a story he once heard about the Elmheim elders, who prize their family's reputation above all else. According to the tale, any family member who dares to stain that reputation meets a gruesome end, fed to the beasts in the dungeons. The Viscount is visibly shaken, asking his son where he heard such a horrifying story. Aster just smiles, vaguely saying it was a long time ago and that he's prepared for the worst, be it exile or something more permanent. His father's concern shifts, asking if Aster is okay with leaving without a proper goodbye to his sister. Aster dismisses the concern, claiming he had planned to leave immediately anyway. He even jokes that Kyudo would be happier with him gone, a comment that leaves his father sighing in exasperation. Changing the subject, Aster credits his duel with Kyudo for giving him a much better understanding of his magic sword Graham. He feels more attuned to his 7-wing power than ever before. With newfound confidence, he makes a bold request, that his father not intervene no matter what happens. He's ready to face this trial alone. His father bristles at his youngest son's audacious and seemingly arrogant declaration. But their conversation is suddenly interrupted as Aster's eyes widen in disbelief at the sight outside the carriage. It's Kyudo clinging to the side of the moving vehicle with a determined pout on her face. In an incredible display of athleticism, she had sprinted to catch up with them. Climbing aboard, she immediately scolds Aster for trying to sneak off without saying goodbye. Kyudo reveals she overheard about the summons, noting how significant it is that he was called when she and Marfa never have been. She plops down next to him, much to her father's bewilderment. She astutely deduces that their own summons home was a precaution, a sign that their father was worried. Her expression turns serious. A summons like this means the situation is grave. She brings up their shared fear, the very real possibility that Aster might not return from this meeting. Aster tries to lighten the mood, calling her worries an exaggeration, though he can't resist a grim joke about his chances of a safe return. Kyudo isn't amused. She gets right in his face, her intensity silencing him. She starts by bluntly stating that she really truly dislikes him. She lists off all the things that have fueled her resentment for years. His gender, his superior 7 wings, and the special treatment he always received. His strength, his maturity, she admits she hates all of it. But then her tone softens. Despite all her jealousy and frustration, he is still her precious family. In a classic tsundere moment, she reminds him that no matter how strong he gets, he'll always be her little brother. She then makes a demand. He must come back home safely because they have a rematch to settle. She declares with a fiery grin that she won't let him get away with a win and run. Having said her piece, she leaps from the still-moving carriage, leaving as abruptly as she appeared. Aster and his father are left stunned. Aster mutters in confusion while the Viscount chuckles, commenting on what a good rival Kudo is. Looking after his sister, a warm, genuine smile spreads across Aster's face as he silently thanks her. As Kudo waves them off, Aster makes a firm resolution. He will survive and he will definitely come back. After a tense journey, Aster and his father finally arrive at the imposing gates of the Elmheim main estate, where they receive a formal yet chilly welcome. A guard immediately informs them that the elder lords are already waiting inside, setting a grim tone for the meeting. When the Viscount suggests he go in alone, the guards block his path, making it clear that their orders are to bring both father and son, no exceptions. The air grows thick with tension as they're escorted under heavy guard, the message loud and clear: this is not a family reunion. A smirk plays on Aster's lips as he quietly notes that it's nostalgic to be back in his quote-unquote old home. He gazes up at the magnificent yet menacing castle, the seat of power for the family that has caused him so much pain. As they walk, the Viscount pulls Aster aside for a serious piece of advice. He warns his son that today of all days he must keep his composure, no matter what provocations the elders throw at them. But Aster, ever defiant, coolly replies that his behavior will depend entirely on how they act, causing his father to sigh in exasperation. Aster turns back with a sharp look, clarifying that if there's a problem it will be with them, not him. His attention is briefly diverted by knights sparring in the courtyard, and he notes the absence of Dariz, the man whose arm he'd broken. His father's voice cuts through his thoughts, demanding to know if he's even listening. With a reassuring smile, Aster promises to behave. After all, his sister made him promise to come back safely, and he intends to keep that promise. He submits his sword to the gatekeeper, and he silently reaffirms his resolve to return home no matter what. The massive doors to the audience chamber swing open, revealing a long, red-carpeted path leading into the belly of the beast. The guards announce their arrival, and they step into the vast, intimidating hall, lined with sentinels and shadowed figures. A deep, gravelly voice echoes from the throne, welcoming his grandson Hyfried after more than a decade. Viscount Hyfried immediately drops to one knee in a show of deep respect for the family's patriarch. He formally addresses the man not just as the sixth head, but as his great and revered grandfather. Aster, however, sees something different. He recognizes this man for what he truly is, the monster lurking in the shadows of the Elmheim family. This is Zenith Elmheim, the sixth head of the main family, a man whose reputation precedes him. Aster's gaze sweeps across the room, taking in the assembly of powerful figures, the former heads of branch families and other Elmheim bigwigs. He even spots a few of the snakes he'd seen at the sword dance gathering. He quickly scans the room, noting with interest that the current family head Roderick is nowhere to be seen. As he kneels beside his father, Zenith confirms his suspicion. Roderick is not present for this meeting. He explains that Roderick, as the commander of the Royal Knights, is far too busy for such mundane affairs. With a condescending sneer, Zenith adds that the old warhorses are simply handling the paperwork for him, a clear power play. Aster reflects on the significance of this moment. In his previous life, he never had the chance to even lay eyes on these people. To gather this many executives without the current head present means something big is about to go down. He thinks to himself that for a so-called retired man, Zenith certainly still knows how to throw his weight around. Visibly sweating, the Viscount finally asks what mundane affairs they've been summoned to discuss. Zenith lets out a low, menacing chuckle, taunting him by asking if he hasn't already figured it out. Zenith cuts to the chase, accusing the Viscount's little pet mutt of causing quite the mess at the sword dance gathering. Viscount Hyfried tries to defend his son. He points out that Roderick, the current head, personally stepped in and settled the matter, implying the issue should be closed. But the other elders are not convinced. One dismisses Roderick's intervention as a mere show for the public, insisting that the Elmheim brand was still scratched. Their verdict is swift and brutal. For tarnishing the family name, Aster must be exiled. Aster immediately leaps to his feet, refusing to let his father take the fall. He shouts that he acted alone and that his father had nothing to do with the incident. However, the Viscount calmly raises a hand, silencing his son's protest before it can go any further. Aster can only look on in confused silence, a drop of sweat rolling down his face. Zenith scoffs at the display, mocking Aster as an undisciplined child trying to butt into an adult conversation. He stands from his throne, reminding them all of the power he wields, commanding 12,000 knights under the Elmheim banner. He paints a picture of their family's strength and the prestige they carry on their backs. He then speaks of the fierce competition within the clan, with countless ambitious members vying for power. He slyly remarks that some of those very rivals are sitting in this room, watching this all unfold. With a sharp tap of his cane, Zenith declares that all they desire is peace of mind. And to get it, they demand proof that the Viscount is not a threat to Elmheim. He points the hilt of sword toward Hyfried. Zenith cruelly reminds the Viscount of a past failure, when Roderick cut off your arm in this very chamber as a punishment for bringing shame to the family. With a terrifying one-eyed glare, Zenith gives his horrific order. This time, to prove his loyalty, the Viscount must sever the head of his own son, Aster. But Hyfried refuses instantly. He declares with unwavering conviction that he would sooner take his own life than harm his child. Aster is visibly stunned and moved by his father's love. Zenith's cold expression gives way to a quiet hum of contemplation. Then with another slam of his cane he delivers his final judgment. In that case you may die. He issues a death sentence not just for the Viscount, but for his entire family, his wife, his daughters, and the boy. The Viscount house will be exterminated. On his command, elite knights comes forward, their swords drawn and ready. Within seconds, father and son are completely surrounded, the sharp points of a dozen blades at their throats. Yet amidst the mortal danger, Aster remains utterly unfazed. He looks up at the tyrant on the throne and asks a simple question: "What are you so afraid of, old man?" Zenith is momentarily speechless, caught off guard by the boy's audacity. Aster calls them pathetic, a group of grown adults huddling together and trembling, terrified of being bitten by their own dog. He throws their options back in their faces, telling them to exile him or kill him. He doesn't care which. But as he speaks, his hand drifts to the red brooch at his collar, a symbol of the family he now fights for. Aster apologizes to his father, admitting with a grim smile that he was never very good at keeping his mouth shut. Then with a defiant roar, he rips his shirt and vest wide open. One of the guards cries out in shock, his eyes wide with disbelief at what he sees. Burning with brilliant red light upon Aster's back is the legendary crest of the Seven Wings. Unleashing a cataclysmic wave of power, Aster issues a final, chilling ultimatum. If they dare to lay a hand on his family, these Seven Wings will become Elmheim's sworn enemy. His eyes glowing like molten gold, he warns them all to think very, very carefully about what they do next. The entire chamber erupts in shock as Zenith cries out, identifying the glowing mark on Aster's back as a seven-wing crest. The elders are stunned into silence, with one questioning if it could possibly be a fake. Another adds that for hundreds of years, such a legendary crest has never appeared on a human. Zenith, his voice heavy with significance, addresses his grandson, demanding to know if he understands the gravity of revealing such a thing here and now. Standing firm against the knight's blades, Aster shows he is fully aware of the consequences of his actions. A confident smirk plays on his lips as he confirms he does, thinking to himself that the legendary status of the Seven Wings is sure to cause a stir. Amidst the tension, a strange sound cuts through the silence, a peal of laughter from a silver-haired man among the elders. After a brief interruption, the man, identified as Count Maze, apologizes and urges them to continue their very serious discussion. Regaining his composure, Zenith begins to explain the origin of the crests, ancient magic organs gifted to humans by spirits. This power was passed down through generations, growing stronger with each heir. While many have manifested these powers, Zenith explains that no human has ever reached the pinnacle of Seven Wings. None, that is, except for the mythical clan of spirits, the very source from which all wing crests originate. Aster challenges the old man, asking if he's implying that he belongs to this legendary spirit clan. Zenith can only speculate that if the crest is genuine, it might be so. The standoff reaches a boiling point, the weight of Aster's revelation hanging heavy in the air. Even with swords at his throat, the Viscount's face shows not fear for himself, but deep concern for his son. Aster takes a step forward, his voice ringing with conviction, declaring that first and foremost, he is the Viscount's son. He states that his origins no longer matter. The only question now is whether the elders are prepared to make him their enemy. He lays out his trump card, explaining that if Elmheim casts him out, countless other powerful knightly houses would clamor to welcome a Seven Wings into their ranks. With Zenith reflected in his golden eyes, Aster drives the point home. Exiling him would create a massive threat, a warrior who could one day surpass even their current head, Roderick. The elders begin to sweat, the terrifying logic of Aster's argument sinking in. They've been completely outmaneuvered. Aster remembers his past life, seeing a future filled with civil war. He knows Elmheim is a fractured house ripe for rebellion. This is a calculated risk. To protect his family, he must force his enemies and allies to show their hands now. Zenith lets out a dry chuckle, mockingly asking if Aster truly believes he's worth all this trouble. The patriarch concedes one point. Aster must first prove that his Seven Wings are real. Aster fires back with unwavering confidence, telling the old man to kill him if he thinks the crest is fake. He issues a final, chilling warning: if they choose that path, it means all-out war. Aster acknowledges his current weakness. If Elmheim truly wanted him dead, they could easily succeed. But he throws down the gauntlet, asking if they're willing to risk the consequences of taking that bait. Just as the tension becomes unbearable, Count Maze speaks up, noting that they're just going in circles. He rises from his seat with a theatrical flair, proposing a simple solution: a trial for Aster right here and now. An elder angrily demands to know what Maze is plotting, but the Count is unfazed. With a charming smile, he puts the question to the room, asking if they aren't all dying to see the legendary power of the Seven Wings for themselves. He argues that it wouldn't be too late to decide Aster's fate after they've witnessed what he can do. Spreading his arms wide, Maze declares that as the greatest warrior clan, they must have a fitting trial prepared. As Maze meets his gaze, Aster realizes with certainty that the strange, theatrical man is an ally. With a newfound ally in the room, Aster's confidence soars, the entire dynamic of the confrontation shifting in his favor. Zenith finally relents with a knowing smirk, agreeing to the trial and beckoning Aster to follow him. As he walks past, the old patriarch adds that it is a grandfather's duty to teach his cheeky grandson a good lesson. They descend into a dark, cavernous space below the manor. Aster wonders aloud if this is the trial ground. Zenith leads him to the edge of a massive pit, explaining that it's an old underground bunker connected to the waterway. What was once a shelter is now a prison for a dangerous magical beast. Aster's trial is simple: defeat it. As they approach the entrance, the Viscount worriedly tells Aster he should have kept his power a secret. But Aster just grins, retorting that a power this great was bound to be revealed eventually, and this was the perfect stage. His father hands him back his sword, gravely warning him not to let his guard down for a second. With a final promise to return, Aster leaps down into the darkness of the trial grounds. A subtle glance is exchanged between Aster and his new ally, Count Maze, a silent confirmation of their shared purpose. Aster lands in the shallow water of the dark arena, his senses on high alert. Though it's nearly pitch black, his enhanced senses can cut through the gloom. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto something in the darkness, and his expression turns to one of shock. It's the mangled body of Dariz, the cousin he'd humiliated. Zenith's cold voice echoes from above, explaining that he'd given the man a chance to redeem himself. As a massive blue beast feasts on the remains, Zenith recounts Dariz's pathetic end, warning Aster not to disappoint him in the same cowardly fashion. Unsheathing his sword, Aster prepares to face the monstrous creature. The beast, a gargantuan red-eyed ape, lets out a deafening roar that shakes the very stones of the arena. Undaunted, Aster stands his ground as Zenith formally declares the beginning of the trial. Aster faces the gargantuan beast, the sole rumor about the Elmheim mansion that turned out to be true. He spares a brief, pitiful thought for his cousin Dariz, thinking that being born into a house of monsters was a cruel fate. Without warning, the beast lunges forward with a deafening, earth-shaking roar. But Aster is faster, he quickly slashes the monster into pieces. Watching from above, the elders gasp in awe at the boy's speed and composure. Aster, however, remains unfazed, thinking to himself that his terrifying sister Kyudo is far scarier than this overgrown pet. Just as he prepares his counterattack, strange purple tendrils begin to sprout from the beast's body. Aster's eyes widen in sheer disbelief as he processes what he's seeing. This wasn't just some random magical beast, its true nature was something far more horrifying. As a malevolent purple aura erupts from its body, Aster realizes he's not just fighting for his life, but against death itself. His father confirms his fears, shouting from the viewing platform that the creature is an undead. Zenith, however, just smirks with a sinister glint in his eye. He explains that the undead was drawn to the smell of death in their bunker and simply wouldn't die, no matter how much they cut or burned it. So they captured it to use as a strength tester, and as he remarks with a chilling glance at the Viscount, a convenient way to dispose of bodies. One of the elders sweats nervously, protesting that even skilled knights can barely capture an undead. He demands to know if Zenith is truly planning to sacrifice the legendary 7 wings for nothing. Looking down from the platform, Zenith scoffs, stating that if Aster dies, it only proves he was a braggart. He coldly adds that a wing crest without power isn't even worthy of being called a decoration. Leaning in, he tells the nervous lord not to worry, whispering that Aster's death might actually be more convenient for them. Through the bars, Count Maze watches the unfolding drama with a neutral expression. He looks down into the arena, silently challenging Aster to back up his big talk and not die so easily. Down below, Aster unleashes a furious volley of slashes against the monstrous undead. His blade strikes true, but his opponent seems completely unfazed by the assault. Aster realizes with dawning frustration that no matter how many times he cuts it, there's no real impact. The creature's regeneration is simply insane. He grits his teeth. An undead is already dead to begin with, making it an incredibly difficult opponent. He knows there are only 2 ways to truly kill one: either burn it completely in sunlight, or purify its corrupted essence with a holy weapon. Failing that, the textbook tactic that most knights follow is simple: do not engage. But in this sealed-off pit, retreat is not an option. A determined glint appears in his eyes. He decides that if he's to prove his worth, he can't rely on basic tactics. He has to do the impossible: overpower an undead with nothing but sheer, overwhelming strength. Red energy explodes from his sword, now glowing with immense magical power. The very ground beneath him cracks and shatters from the sheer force of his aura. The elders are thrown off their feet, absolutely stunned by the incredible display of magic. They shout in confusion, wondering what just happened, and if Aster managed to defeat the beast in a single blow. Zenith, the only one still standing, peers down into the now dust-filled arena. As the smoke clears, Aster is revealed, standing firm in the center of the destruction. But Zenith merely remarks what a waste of energy it was. Before Aster can react, the completely unharmed undead lashes out from the smoke, sending him flying. He grunts in pain as he's violently slammed into the ground. The beast looms over his prone body, ready to deliver the final blow. The Viscount screams his son's name in pure terror, desperately clutching the bars of the platform. Count Maze coolly places a hand on his shoulder, telling him not to ruin the trial by jumping in. Enraged and desperate, the Viscount asks if Maze truly expects him to just stand by and watch his son be killed. With a calm, almost chiding tone, Maze tells him to settle down. He gestures toward the arena, a knowing smile on his face, suggesting that Aster still has a trump card left to play. Though battered, Aster smirks. A faint magical light glows on his cheek as he confirms to himself that his plan is working. He watches the beast, which now has glowing red wounds covering its body where his attacks landed. He notes that his opponent is now slightly slimmer than before. The regeneration isn't absolute. With a defiant grin, he shoves his blade straight into the undead's gaping maw, pushing with all his might. The beast reels back as dark, corrupted blood spews from the wound. With a battle cry, Aster declares he'll keep pushing until the creature finally dies for good. A whirlwind of red light unleashes, tearing through the beast's flesh. His father watches in utter shock, recognizing the faint outline of a sword technique he once showed Aster a few days back. But this is something different, something entirely new. His son has taken that basic lesson and evolved it into a monstrously powerful style of his own. The sheer force of Aster's assault reverberates through the entire underground chamber, shaking it to its very core. The elders scream in panic as the viewing platform begins to crack and crumble around them. A knight frantically ushers them away, shouting that the whole place is about to collapse. Only Zenith remains standing firm against the shockwaves, his gaze fixed on the spectacle below. His eyes glow with a red light, reflecting the raw, untamed power his grandson has unleashed. And in the heart of the destructive storm he created, Aster wears a triumphant, almost feral grin. This is the true power of the Seven Wings. Zenith assessed the aftermath of his grandson's terrifying power. He mused that Aster had dragged the nigh indestructible undead into a vortex of pure magic and ground it to dust. It wasn't a refined technique, it was a feat accomplished through sheer brute force and an overwhelming volume of magic. Zenith acknowledged that this was a display only a true Seven Wings could achieve, turning to a stunned Viscount. He asked if this was his doing, but Aster's father could only admit that he was just as shocked by his son's growth as everyone else. Count Maze, ever the opportunist, seized the moment to ask the still-reeling elders if Aster had passed their little test. Zenith, speaking for the group, declared that he doubted anyone present would object. Maze happily relayed the news to Aster, telling him he had passed and should come back up. But there was a small problem. Aster stood alone in the crater he had created, the dust settling around him. With a wry grin, he explained that the chain he used to climb down had been obliterated in his own attack, and sheepishly asked for a rope. Sometime later, Aster was summoned to a private meeting with Lord Zenith. Zenith gave him an ultimatum, a final chance to join the main house, but Aster stood his ground. He calmly stated that he had no interest in fighting for the succession. He reasoned that his presence would only make his cousins uncomfortable, and that his true place was back at his family's viscountage. Zenith chuckled, calling it false modesty. He told the boy he couldn't be fooled, claiming he could see the burning ambition in his eyes. The old patriarch cut straight to the heart of the matter, asking if Aster truly intended to one day turn his blade against Elmheim itself. Zenith speaks if Roderick's head is his target. Aster was taken aback by Zenith's perception, his mind racing. Zenith simply laughed, telling him not to be so tense. He assured him he wasn't there to pry into his plans, for now. Aster questioned this, asking why Zenith wouldn't see him as an enemy. Zenith revealed that the elders were not a monolith. He admitted that Roderick, the head of the knights, was too powerful for his liking. Aster's existence as a new, formidable power would serve as a convenient check against Roderick, creating a new balance. But he ended with a thinly veiled threat. Should Aster ever dare to bare his fangs at him, there would be dire consequences. As Aster left, he couldn't help but think of his grandfather as an old, cunning monster. His father and Count Maze were waiting outside. The Viscount was stunned to hear that Aster had been offered a place in the main house and turned it down. Maze remarked that it was a shame, pointing out the life of privilege he had just given up. Aster turned to the silver-haired Count, directly asking why he had proposed the trial, an act that had ultimately helped him. With a dismissive wink, Maze simply said he felt like teasing a cocky brat. However, his demeanor shifted as he placed a hand on Aster's shoulder. He told him that from now on, he was officially recognized as the Seven Wings Boy by everyone who mattered. Maze gestured to the other nobles, whose eyes were now fixed on Aster with a mixture of avarice and fear. Some saw a powerful tool to be acquired, while others saw a dangerous obstacle to be eliminated. Maze explained that the Seven-Wing crest held tremendous value, and now Aster would be a target for all sorts of people. Aster eyed him warily, asking if Maze was one of the people who would be coming after him. Maze cheerfully admitted he was. As a board member of the Knight Academy, scouting promising talent was his job. He pointed out another lord, noting that he wasn't the only one with his eyes on the new prodigy. He ended the conversation by saying he eagerly awaited the day Aster would enroll in the academy. Watching him go, Aster found the Count to be an inscrutable man, and certainly not someone he could trust as an ally yet. His father gently pulled him along, eager to get home and tell his sisters all about his son's incredible achievement. Aster couldn't help but grin, though he dreaded his mother's reaction to his battered state. Elsewhere, a far more imposing figure was receiving a report. The captain of the knights knelt before Lord Roderick. The knight informed him of Dari's death during a trial set by Lord Zenith, and of Aster's involvement. Roderick's eyes narrowed as the knight recounted how Zenith seemed utterly unfazed by his own grandson's demise. He coldly inquired about the outcome of the other boy's trial. Roderick cut the knight's report short, stating with absolute certainty that the boy truly possessed the Seven Wings. The captain was floored, his lord already knew. Roderick mused that Aster's emergence threatened to shatter the long-standing balance of power within the House of Elmheim. Alarmed, the knight asked if they should take immediate action to neutralize the threat. But Roderick was unconcerned. He scoffed, claiming that if Elmheim's foundation was so fragile it could be shaken by a single boy, it would have fallen long ago. With chilling ambition, he declared that the Seven Wings would belong to him sooner or later. For now, he would simply let the boy roam free. As his subordinate left, Roderick's thoughts drifted to that infant he failed to catch back then. He vowed to see how far Ash, child of Seven Wings, could struggle, challenging him to provide some entertainment. 4 years pass in the blink of an eye. We find ourselves at the entrance exam for the prestigious Dorlethil Knight Academy, bustling with hopeful applicants. A tall, well-built young man steps up to the registration desk, immediately drawing the attention of the crowd. Whispers ripple through the line as people wonder if this is the rumored prodigy they've heard so much about. Some are skeptical, however, with one onlooker commenting that he'd heard the famous Seven Wings boy was supposed to be more muscular. The registration process is strict. Applicants must sign a waiver acknowledging the risks of the exam. And most importantly, they must present their wing crest to prove they possess magic. The examiner calls out the applicant's name, Aster F. Elmheim. The name Elmheim makes the man do a double take, his eyes widening in recognition. Aster, now a confident young man, turns around with a smirk. He claims his wing crest is in a rather inconvenient location, and playfully asks if they'll let him pass based on his good looks alone. The grounds are swarming with hopeful applicants for the entrance exam. Aster's presence immediately draws unwanted attention. A boisterous applicant singles him out, calling him a stuck-up-looking guy and deciding to put him in his place. The man, who identifies himself as Bigger Smythe, condescendingly assumes Aster is just some backwater noble who has wandered into the wrong place. He gestures to the Academy's crest, reminding Aster that this is the grueling selection exam for the elite royal knights. Aster's complete lack of a reaction only serves to infuriate Smythe, who can't believe the nerve of the newcomer. The bully launches into a tirade, explaining that everyone here has bled and sweat for years just for a shot at this exam. They are all chasing the singular dream of walking the shining road of an elite knight. Smythe then scoffs at Aster's smaller blade, mocking it as a kitty-sized sword unsuited for a real warrior. He tells the baby chick to scram before he gets hurt, trying to wave him away like a fly. Nearby, other applicants recognize the loudmouth, remarking that Smythe is at it again, bullying the newbies year after year. Their conversation quickly shifts to Aster, however, as they wonder if he's the infamous prodigy from the Elmheim house they've all heard about. The rumors of Aster, the Seven Wings boy, had clearly reached far and wide. The words Seven Wings finally make Smythe pause, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Before he can process it, a new smoothly polite voice cuts in, familiarly addressing Aster as cousin. Aster's relaxed demeanor vanishes, his golden eyes narrowing as he recognizes the newcomer, Grian from the main house. Grian greets him with a practiced smile, explaining that since Aster's origins are unknown, he simply decided to call him cousin. He then offers a mockingly sincere apology for the death of his own brother, Dariz, 4 years prior. Aster can only look on, stunned by the callous way Grian brings up the past. But Grian isn't finished. He laughs, calling Dariz a disgrace who deserved to die and admitting it's refreshing not having the nuisance around. He recalls how his older brother was a pain, always throwing his weight around just because he was born a year earlier. With a chilling smile, Grian's friendly facade drops, warning Aster not to look down on the main house members. His final words are a thinly veiled threat. Here at the Academy, Aster has no one left to protect him. As Grian and his followers walk off, the other applicants murmur about the spectacle, confirming the infamous bad blood between the Elmheim main and branch families. This revelation sends a jolt of terror through Bigger Smythe, who is now sweating bullets. The terrified bully finally puts 2 and 2 together, stammering as he tries to confirm if Aster is that Elmheim. Aster simply stares him down, his intense gaze saying everything. Then his serious expression melts into a devilish smirk. He playfully tells the now humbled bully to just call him Aster Senpai. With the petty squabbles settled, the applicants are led into the massive first exam hall. High above on a balcony, an examiner begins his welcome speech, his voice echoing through the chamber. He passionately declares that the Royal Knights are not like some provincial guards. They are the proud blades who serve and protect the king himself. The hopefuls listen with awe and determination, their gazes fixed on the man who represents the dream they're all chasing. The examiner's speech reaches a crescendo as he tells them to think of the exam as a battlefield and show their true worth. Aster takes it all in, a smirk playing on his lips. He muses that he's finally made it back to this place. He remembers his past life when, as a wingless nobody, he wasn't even allowed to dream of becoming a royal knight. He knows that at the pinnacle of this world of warriors sits one man, Roderick A. Elmheim, the supreme commander. Aster silently vows to his rival that he is coming for him and will catch up soon. The imposing image of Roderick burns in his mind. But first things first, he needs to pass this exam. As if on cue, the examiner roars for the first test to begin, and dozens of spears appears from the walls. The trial starts with no further warning. A spear finds its mark, piercing an unlucky applicant straight through the head. It's the trial of arrows, and the objective is simple: be one of the last ones standing. A deadly rain of projectiles descends upon the hall, sowing chaos and death. Panic erupts, the unprepared are quickly impaled, their screams echoing off the stone walls. The exam hall instantly transforms into a slaughterhouse, with bodies dropping every second. However, some of the more experienced applicants, likely those who have failed before, quickly form defensive circles, working together to parry the attacks. The examiner watches from his perch, noting that while the repeat takers know the basic strategy, their survival rate is still a measly 30%. Simple tricks won't be enough here. As more fall, he knows that teamwork alone will eventually be overwhelmed. What the examiners are truly looking for are overwhelming individual solutions, the kind of power only true magic wielders possess. All the while, Aster has remained perfectly still in the center of the kill zone, seemingly unconcerned. His inaction draws panic shouts from others, who assume he's frozen in fear and about to die. From the edge of the chaos, Grian watches with a smug sneer, happily anticipating his cousin being turned into a human pincushion. But Aster is anything but scared. With a calm resolve, he finally draws his sword. In an instant, his body erupts in a swirl of crimson energy. The other applicants, Grian included, can only stare in utter disbelief at the impossible scene unfolding before them. Aster isn't just surviving, he's deflecting every single spear aimed at him, creating a whirlwind of steel and magic. Untouched and unfazed in the eye of the storm, a wicked grin spreads across his face as he silently challenges the trial to bring him everything it's got. The storm of steel and magic deflects every single spear, creating a perfect safe zone in the eye of the hurricane. From the sidelines, Smythe's jaw drops in disbelief. He can't believe what he's seeing. Even the examiner is impressed, recognizing the technique. Aster is spinning his released magic to create a powerful air current. He notes the incredible level of magic control, likening it to being wrapped in a personal storm. And then, just as suddenly as it began, the onslaught of spears comes to a halt. The examiner looks down from his balcony, a little surprised that more survived than he expected. He announces to the exhausted survivors that those who remain standing have officially cleared the first exam. Among the weary faces, Grian and his lackeys stand tall, having survived the brutal trial. With no time for rest, the examiner orders the applicants to follow him to the next test site. Smythe pants for breath, cursing the demonic instructor for the brutal pace. Aster, looking completely unfazed, playfully asks his senpai if he's worn out already. Smythe is flabbergasted, demanding to know how Aster is so fresh after a test that left everyone else gasping. From his perch, the examiner observes Aster, marveling that the Seven Wings boy could unleash that much magic and not even look tired. He's eager to see how the prodigy handles a real fight. Grian and his followers march on, their expressions grim. The game is far from over. In a chilling flashback, we see Grian receiving orders from a shadowy figure. The command is absolute. Whatever happens, Grian must stop Aster from becoming a royal knight for the future of their clan. As the survivors are led into a forest, a new instructor lays out the next step. To ensure fairness, everyone must exchange their personal weapons for identical, standard-issue swords. Smythe grumbles about the inconvenience of trading his massive blade for a basic one. He shrugs it off, saying for middle-class knights like him, the swords aren't that different anyway. But then it dawns on him. The real reason for the switch is likely because the examiners are wary of Aster's unusual, powerful blade. Aster takes his new sword without complaint, his expression unreadable. Grian saunters over, his voice dripping with condescension as he congratulates Aster on taming a follower so quickly. Smythe frantically denies being anyone's follower, but Grian isn't listening. The main house heir puts Smythe in his place, sneering that a third-rate country noble like him should be careful who he sides with. The warning is clear: wagging your tail for the wrong person will get you bitten. Smythe, pale with terror, immediately begins to grovel, desperately trying to distance himself from Aster. He pleads with Lord Grian, insisting he wants nothing to do with the Branch family outcast. Aster watches the pathetic display, a bead of sweat on his face. He's getting bad vibes. The examiner cuts through the tension, yelling for everyone's attention to explain the second test. The exam is called the Battle for Territory, a team-based fight for control of the forest. The applicants will be split into 3 teams, each fighting over several bases hidden within the woods. Scattered throughout the forest are flagpoles. To capture a base, a team simply has to raise their flag. The winning condition is simple: the team holding at least 2 bases by the time the evening bell rings passes. While damaging or stealing the flags themselves is forbidden, there are no other restrictions. The examiner grins, telling them to think of their new swords, as permission slips to cut down anyone who gets in their way. He holds up the 3 team flags, red, yellow, and blue, and begins to announce the members. As expected, Grian is made the leader of the red team. A calm, blonde-haired noble leads the yellow, and Aster finds himself on the blue team, stuck with the Smythe. A signal flare shoots into the sky, and the second exam officially begins. Aster quickly explains the strategy to his new teammates. With 3 teams and a capture 2 bases win condition, only one team can emerge victorious. Smythe confirms the brutal math, but another teammate speaks up, his voice trembling. He says he's not cool with the idea of having to fight the Elmheims. Aster looks at him, confused by his fear. It's just an exam after all. Smythe shakes his head, explaining the harsh reality. It's not about the exam, it's about the fear of what comes after. He lays it out: they are up against a true noble from the main Elmheim house, a family known for its tyranny and unforgiving nature. To even point a sword at Grian, even under the rules of the exam, is to risk their entire future. The consequences could be dire: stripped of their knightly status, or worse, their entire family line wiped out in retaliation. Simply put, nobody in their right mind wants to make an enemy of the Elmheim clan. Hearing this, Aster asks the question, are they just going to give up? Smythe scoffs that there's always next year, which is better than being erased from existence. He looks at Aster with pity and disdain, saying a monster like him wouldn't understand the fears of a weakling. And just like that, Aster is left completely alone, abandoned by his team before the test has even truly begun. He reflects on the situation, unable to blame them. He'd almost forgotten the terrifying reputation the Elmheim name carried. They are a clan of absolute tyrants, an untouchable force that you must never ever defy. And Grian, with his cruel smile and powerful backing, is the living symbol of that reign of fear. But Aster just smiles wryly to himself. On the outside, he's just as much of a weakling as they are. With no other choice, he takes off running, deciding to tackle the challenge solo. He notes the strange quiet, wondering if the other teams are just being cautious. Reaching one of the bases, he finds an unexpected sight, a lone figure waiting for him. It's the leader of the yellow team. The blonde noble remarks that Aster's arrival was predicted by him, suggesting a plan is already in motion. Aster is confused. Who is he? And more importantly, why has the yellow team's leader lowered his own flag? The blonde man smiles mysteriously, saying he was free and wanted to add some spice to the game. He then casually tosses his yellow flag. Aster can only watch, stunned, as the flag sails through the air. What the hell is going on? The blonde man then hoists the red flag and simply offers a smug grin, his motive still a complete mystery. As it turns out, the rest of the yellow team is now running towards Aster's blue base, leaderless but united in purpose. The scene cuts to Grian and his entire red team, now seemingly allied with the yellow team's forces. Grian declares that he's about to show Aster what it truly means to fight like an Elmheim. The second trial, the battle for territory, kicks off with a deafening clash of steel. Aster is immediately intercepted by the mysterious leader of the yellow team, a blonde noble with skills to match our hero. Aster presses him, demanding to know why a member of the yellow team is raising the red team's flag. The blonde swordsman, Christopher Nolan, remains cool and composed in the face of Aster's confusion. With a smug grin, he reveals that he and the Elmheim clan have formed an alliance to take Aster down. From a high perch, one of the examiners watches the duel with great interest. He recognizes the blonde noble as Christopher Nolan, heir to the renowned Nolan house of swordsmanship and a 5 wings prodigy in his own right. The examiner recalls that during the spear trial, only 2 candidates managed to pass without breaking a sweat. Those 2 were Aster and Nolan, but because of the rules of this team battle, only one of them can pass. Back in the fight, Aster is still trying to process the alliance, blades ringing out with every parry. He points out the obvious flaw in their plan. Even if 2 teams join forces, only one can be declared the winner. Nolan just smiles, confidently declaring that he's already decided the main house of Elmheim will be the one to win. He then drops a bombshell, revealing that his teammates and Grian's forces are already storming Aster's undefended base. A flash of concern crosses Aster's face for Smythe and the others, but Nolan cruelly dismisses his worry. He mocks Aster's naivety, asking if he really thinks Grian needed to threaten the other weaklings to secure their cooperation. Nolan explains that the world of nobles is built on a strict hierarchy. You don't stand in front of a speeding carriage. He lunges forward, proclaiming that this is how the powerful are meant to act, by crushing those beneath them. As their swords collide with immense force, a sickening crack appears on Aster's blade. He instantly understands. The examiner didn't just give him a standard-issue sword, he gave him a faulty one, likely on Grian's orders. Nolan continues his assault, sneering that despite the sabotage, it's still a one-on-one fight. He admits he's never been a fan of the Elmheim family anyway, and he especially despises show-offs like Aster, punctuating his sentence by shattering the tip of Aster's sword. But Aster is faster. With a quick flick of his wrist, he catches the broken shard midair. Before Nolan can react, Aster hurls the piece of steel back like a dagger. Nolan expertly deflects the projectile, but the unexpected counterattack creates the opening Aster was waiting for. Seizing the opportunity, Aster turns and sprints away from the duel. He yells over his shoulder that he's got bigger fish to fry, and Nolan will have to wait his turn. Nolan simply scoffs, calling Aster a coward who isn't even worthy of the title of knight. Just as he's about to give chase, his eyes land on the broken sword fragment on the ground. He picks it up, his expression shifting as he examines the cheap metal. He recognizes the shoddy craftsmanship, realizing it's a pathetic trick orchestrated by the Elmheim clan. Meanwhile, Aster races towards his camp, hoping he isn't too late to save his teammates. He arrives to find a scene of total betrayal. Grian is perched casually on the wall, flanked by his forces. Grian mockingly welcomes his cousin, surprised that Nolan couldn't even manage to stall him properly. He gloats that with 3 bases now under their control, his victory is all but assured. Aster's eyes are cold as he ignores the taunts, asking only one thing: what happened to his teammates. Grian's smug expression wavers for just a moment before he glances down into the base. Suddenly, Aster feels the cold tip of a sword press against his back. He turns to see his own teammate Smythe holding him at sword point, backed by the rest of the blue team. Smythe is shaking, stammering that he warned Aster from the very beginning that only a fool would defy the Elmheim clan. The betrayal is complete. Aster is now completely surrounded by his former allies. Grian laughs from the wall, remarking that even simple country folk know which Elmheim to side with. He holds up 2 fingers, telling Aster not to be naive. This isn't about numbers, it's about strategy. They've already won. With red flags flying over 2 bases, they've already fulfilled the winning condition. Aster now stands utterly alone, a single warrior against 2 combined teams. Grian lays out his checkmate. Even if Aster manages to capture a base, he has no teammates left to defend it. Their strategy is simple: let Aster wear himself out and then swoop in to reclaim any lost territory. With a final, arrogant smile, Grian declares the game is over. As long as they hold 2 bases by the end, they win. But Aster isn't broken. His grip tightens on the hilt of his shattered sword. His golden eyes blaze with fury as he promises to make sure they can't do a single thing. He'll cut down every last one of you. The traitors flinch at his killing intent, but Grian just laughs it off. He calls Aster's bluff, pointing out that his broken sword is completely useless. On Grian's single command, his army moves in to encircle their lone target. He mocks Aster, asking if a 7 wings without a weapon is really any better than being wingless. He dares Aster to take them all on right here, right now. To everyone's surprise, a smirk plays on Aster's lips. He admits that Grian has him. He commends his cousin, stating that the plan was actually better than he expected. Smythe and the others can only watch in stunned silence, unable to comprehend what's happening. Then Aster tosses the broken sword aside, leaving himself completely unarmed. Grian's face contorts into a mask of pure ecstatic victory. He's done it, he's won. The shattered blade clatters to the dusty ground. But just as Smythe attacks, Aster moves with blinding speed, his eyes glowing with an eerie red light. He effortlessly dodges the strike and lands a brutal kick, sending the traitor flying and disarming him in one fluid motion. Before anyone can even process what just happened, He snatches the falling sword out of midair, finally armed with a proper weapon. With his newfound blade, he becomes an unstoppable force, cutting down Grion's soldiers one by one. From his vantage point on the wall, Grion can only watch in horror as his army is dismantled with terrifying efficiency. Aster, now holding a sturdy sword, points it at his cousin, a look of cold fury on his face. He tells Grion that showing up in front of him was his biggest mistake, and because of it he's going to lose everything right here and now. Grion's face twists in disbelief and rage, sputtering that Aster is a monster. A torrent of red energy surrounds Aster as he prepares to close the distance. In a feat of impossible strength, he leaps into the air, soaring towards the top of the massive wall. Grion looks on in utter shock, unable to believe that Aster just flew all the way over to him. Aster's eyes glow menacingly as he tells his cousin that his draw is far too slow. With a single, precise strike, he smacks the sword from Grion's hand, leaving him completely defenseless. As they grapple, Aster is hit with a flashback to his infancy, remembering the first time he ever flew. He recalls that because he started out wingless, he felt the omnipotence of controlling magic even more clearly. Aster tells Grion that having a wing crest is a nice perk, but it makes people like him forget just how high the walls they stand on truly are. He grabs Grion by the collar. Grion struggles, pleading for him to stop, but it's no use. Aster lifts him effortlessly, explaining that the wall Grion thought was so high is actually pitifully low from his perspective. With a vicious smile, Aster prepares to deliver the final blow. A massive explosion of red energy erupts from the top of the wall, shaking the very foundations of the fort. The shockwave sends a plume of dust and smoke billowing into the sky. Back on the ground, Smythe and the other traders stare in stunned silence, wondering what just happened to Grion's forces. One of them spots a figure emerging from the smoke-filled archway. It's Aster, walking calmly out of the dust and debris. His golden eyes are cold and unfeeling as he approaches. He's dragging the battered and unconscious body of Grion by the scruff of his neck. He unceremoniously dumps his cousin on the ground, the fight completely drained from the arrogant noble. The remaining soldiers can only look on, frozen in utter terror. Grion, barely able to speak, orders his men to kill Aster, reminding them it's an order from Elmheim. But his words fall on deaf ears. His men are too terrified to move a muscle. Smythe quickly moves to pick up a fallen sword. Aster turns to him, his expression unreadable, and asks if Elmheim's retribution is really that terrifying. Smythe snaps, screaming that of course it is. He explains that his family, the Smythes, are a third-rate noble line that could be snuffed out like a candle. They're forced to grovel to survive. He spits that someone like Aster, who has everything, could never understand their fear. Aster listens patiently to Smythe's desperate explanation, his gaze unwavering. Then a small, knowing smile plays on his lips. Smythe is utterly bewildered, asking why he's laughing. Aster recalls his sister once telling him the same thing, that he couldn't understand those who have nothing. He looks at Grion's defeated form and admits that while it's true he's in a blessed position, that very position gives him the power to do things others can't. He places his sword at Grion's throat. He declares that his enemy is the current, arrogant Elmheim family. He roars that if they can't change things, then he'll do it himself. He vows to smash their smug world to pieces. Grion's men and Aster's former teammates can only stare, utterly flabbergasted by his declaration. Grion himself looks up from the dirt, his eyes wide with a mixture of fear and fury. Smythe realizes the weight of Aster's words. This is more than just defiance, it's a declaration of war against his own clan. Aster looks at the terrified men, his eyes burning with conviction. He tells them that no matter how much they grovel, the current Elmheim will only betray them in the end. Their devotion will lead to a miserable death. He calmly states that if they don't like that future, their only choice is to fight. The 7 wings on his back, he proclaims, are the power to do just that. He stands over the fallen Grion, his message clear. He gives them a choice: side with the pathetic, groveling Elmheim represented by Grion, or side with him. The men are shaken to their core, caught between 2 impossible choices. Grion, mustering his last bit of strength, screams that he'll remember all their faces and names, threatening them with ruin if they betray him. Grion's men are terrified, knowing he's telling the truth. Smythe is caught in the middle, the weight of his family's future crushing him. His face contorts in anguish as he lets out a desperate cry. He drops his sword, a symbol of his surrender to fear. But then, with newfound resolve, he runs forward not to attack, but to pick up his fallen blue armband. With tears streaming down his face, he walks toward the fallen blue flag. In a loud, clear voice that echoes through the courtyard, Smythe, eldest son of House Smythe, pledges his unwavering support to Aster F. Elmheim. Grion's remaining men are speechless. He actually did it. They realize instantly that Grion's perfect plan is now completely in shambles. Grion's eyes burn with pure, unadulterated hatred as he stares up at the man who just betrayed him. He spits out one final insult, calling Smythe a country bumpkin monkey. Smythe calls out to the others. With fiery conviction, he declares this is their chance to finally stick it to the arrogant Elmheims and put their faith in the wingless outcast. The others, who had betrayed Aster out of fear, now watch with a mix of shock and dawning hope. Aster acknowledges his first new ally with a calm, appraising gaze. Inspired by Smythe's defiance, other soldiers begin to rally. Meanwhile, Grion kneels in the dirt, completely defeated and seething with impotent rage. One of his remaining loyal men rushes to his side, asking if he's all right. But Grion, in a fit of fury, violently smacks his subordinate's hand away, screaming at the useless trash not to touch him. His eyes burn with hatred as he processes the humiliation of being defied by a nobody from a branch house. He thinks that if he lets Aster get away with this, he'll never be able to face the main house. He flashes back to the fate of his brother Gris and resolves that he is not the same. He grips his hand, steeling his resolve, vowing that he can't let it end for him in a place like this. Just then a voice calls out to Elmheim, and a figure approaches the defeated Grian. Grian looks up, his expression shifting from despair to confusion as he recognizes the newcomer. It's Nolan. Grian's despair turns to rage as he screams at Nolan, demanding to know where he's been. He points at Aster, reminding Nolan that he was supposed to deal with him. A wicked smile spreads across Grian's face as a new plan forms in his mind. He realizes that with Nolan on his side, they still have a chance. While Nolan might not have 7 wings, his swordsmanship is unrivaled. Grian hysterically orders Nolan to hurry up and cut Aster down. As Nolan approaches, he casually tosses the red flag to the Grian's face. He holds up a hand, stopping Grian's desperate hopes in their tracks. His eyes glowing with resolve, he declares that Grian's dishonorable methods go against his code of knighthood. With that, Nolan officially calls off their alliance. Grian recoils, completely stunned by this ultimate betrayal. The remaining soldiers are equally shocked, murmuring in disbelief that even the powerful House Nolan is turning on them. Now they have no idea who to follow. Nolan turns his attention to Aster, drawing his blade. The exam, he reminds him, isn't over. Aster calmly looks on, his expression unreadable, as if he expected this very outcome. Nolan prepares to strike, ready to pit his family's proud swordsmanship against Aster's legendary 7 wings. He faces his opponent, ready to settle things once and for all. With a flash of golden energy, Nolan charges forward, his sword alight with devastating power. But Aster, a smirk on his face, meets the attack head-on, his own blade glowing with a crimson aura. He effortlessly parries the blow, a flurry of red energy deflecting the powerful strike. Nolan's eyes widen in shock. This man is nothing like the Aster he fought before. The force of the impact engraves the Nolan's sword into the ground, cracking the very dirt beneath their feet. Straining against Aster's blade, Nolan grits his teeth in disbelief at his opponent's newfound strength. He pushes off back, making some distance, reminding Aster that only one team can pass this exam. Since they both want to be royal knights, he shouts that there's no choice but to decide the winner here and now. Aster simply closes his eyes, calmly admitting that this is indeed a problem for him. He opens his eyes and looks straight at his rival, telling Nolan that he wants him to become a royal knight too. Nolan is taken aback, utterly confused by Aster's statement. Aster casually explains that it would be pretty lame to rally everyone to his cause, only to then force Nolan to give up his dream just because they're on opposite teams. A confident smirk spreads across Aster's face as he reveals his true intentions. He has a plan to get everyone here to pass the exam. Nolan and the battered Grian can only stare in utter disbelief at his audacious claim. The other candidates are just as stunned, wondering if what he's suggesting is even possible. Aster admits he can't guarantee it'll work, but he's confident it will, as long as everyone cooperates. His plan, however, starts with the last person anyone would expect. He looks down at his beaten cousin, his expression unreadable. Extending a hand to the fallen Grian, Aster calmly says that it's time for them to make up. Sometime later, a strange sight appears at all 3 of the forts. The blue flag is raised, but tied to it are the red and yellow flags of the other 2 teams. The exam proctor storms in, demanding to know the meaning of this blatant mockery. Aster calmly explains the situation. The victory condition was to control 2 or more bases, but the rules never specified that only one team could raise a flag at each base, so the 3 teams simply formed an alliance and jointly occupied all of them. The proctor is enraged, accusing them of making a mockery of the exam, questioning if they'd just shake hands with an enemy on a real battlefield. Aster counters his logic, asking what he would do if the enemy was worth more alive than dead. The proctor rigidly states that as royal knights, the swords of the kingdom, they do not have the authority to make that call. He glares at Aster, utterly furious at this blatant loophole exploitation. Aster presses his advantage, asking if the proctor intends to fail them all. He points out that since no rules were broken, failing them would be a personal bias, an abuse of his authority. Getting in close, Aster adds one final, veiled threat. He asks if the proctor really thinks the powerful main house nobles will stay quiet if he flunks all of their children at once. The proctor is left thinking, trapped by Aster's flawless logic and political maneuvering. The scene shifts to a waiting hall, where the candidates have been ordered to wait for an hour. They anxiously wonder if they're all going to be failed for their stunt. Aster, however, remains calm. He tells them it's hard to say, but at the very least, they proved they were worthy of a serious discussion. Grian sits with his cronies, still fuming over the turn of events. Smythe can't believe it, remarking that he's shocked the rich boy Grian actually agreed to help. He asks Aster what he possibly could have said to convince him. Aster just gives him a sly, mysterious smile, saying it was nothing special. Suddenly, the main doors swing open with a bang. The proctor stands there, calling for their attention. Everyone jumps to their feet, the tension in the room skyrocketing. The proctor announces that the headmaster Mimir himself will now deliver the exam results. An unassuming older man enters, and Smythe whispers to Aster, questioning if this ordinary-looking man is truly the legendary headmaster. Aster shoots him a look, quietly telling his new subordinate to show some respect. The man's appearance belies his authority. The headmaster's gaze sweeps across the room before landing squarely on Aster, singling him out from the crowd. Mimir addresses Aster directly, stating that his unprecedented actions have forced the Academy's board into a very difficult position. Admitting this many candidates at once is simply unheard of. He reveals that there was serious discussion about holding a retest to weed out the applicants. However, with the support of the other board members, a different decision was reached. They have decided to accept Aster's unorthodox proposal. Aster's calm facade finally cracks with a hint of surprise as he asks the headmaster to clarify what he means. Mimir pauses, letting the tension build as every candidate holds their breath, waiting for the final verdict. Then a warm, benevolent smile spreads across his face as he delivers the shocking news. Every single one of them has passed. The room erupts. Grian and Nolan stare in disbelief, while the other candidates can hardly contain their shock and joy. Smythe leaps to his feet, cheering wildly at their success. Aster, meanwhile, simply offers a knowing, satisfied smirk. His gamble paid off. The headmaster formally congratulates the new class on their admission, his voice echoing through the now celebratory hall. He officially welcomes them all to the prestigious Dorlathil Royal Knight Academy, their new home and training ground. Later, the newly minted cadets are seen celebrating their success, relaxing in the Academy's opulent bathhouse. Smythe is practically giddy, laughing about how amazing the food is and how massive the baths are. He raises a toast, loudly proclaiming that they owe all of this luxury to their new leader, Lord Aster. Aster, for his part, simply soaks in the warm water, quietly enjoying a rare moment of peace amidst the chaos. The other cadets, inspired by Smythe, start cheering and celebrating, pledging their undying loyalty to Aster for getting them in. Nolan, however, sits apart from the group, looking thoroughly unimpressed by the spectacle. He scoffs at the rowdy men, calling them a bunch of fairweather types, reminding them that just a short while ago they were all groveling at Grian's feet. Smythe fires back, retorting that Nolan has no room to talk since he's the one who lost to Aster. Nolan defensively claims it was a draw, not a loss. Aster smoothly interjects, a confident smirk playing on his lips as he diffuses the tension. He tells them it doesn't matter who won or lost. What's truly important is that they all defied a member of the powerful Elmheim family and still managed to become cadets. He looks around at his new allies, explaining that small victories like this will someday build into a massive wave, one that will finally topple the Elmheim's tyrannical rule. With a sharp, predatory grin, Aster declares that this is where their rebellion truly begins. His thoughts then drift to his family. While his two older sisters have already graduated from the academy, his other sister, Ulfin, is still enrolled a year ahead of him. He muses that her inside knowledge of the academy's politics and structure will make her a valuable ally in the days to come. With training set to begin the very next day, Aster knows he needs to quickly acclimate to his new life and prepare for the battles ahead. As Aster stands to leave the bath, he's suddenly met with a bizarre sight. His newfound followers begin to swarm around him, their faces lit with a strange fervor. A bewildered Aster demands to know what they think they're doing. One of them shouts that seeing a real-life 7 wings is a sign of good luck. Before he can react, the entire group kneels and begins praying to him, hoping some of his power will rub off on them. Aster can only yell in frustration that it doesn't work that way. Watching the chaotic scene from a distance, Nolan lets out a long, weary sigh. He mutters to himself that dealing with this new Aster-obsessed group is going to be a real handful. The scene shifts to the other part of Academy, cloaked in the darkness of night. Inside a lavish, moonlit room, Grian lies prostrate on the cold floor before the imposing figure of a woman. This is his mother, Helen Elmheim, and she icily informs him of her profound disappointment. She berates him for his utter failure, not only for losing to the 7 Wings boy, but for allowing himself to be swayed and come crawling back as a part of Aster's group. He desperately apologizes and swears that he will make up for his failure next time. His frantic pleas are met with cold fury. With a vicious crack, he is kicked across the face by another woman. She snarls that for worthless trash like him, there is no next time. She sneers that useless scum like him would be better off chopped up and fed to a magic beast. This is Lillian A. Elmheim, Grian's sister, and her eyes burn with contempt as she looms over him. She viciously grinds her boot into his back, comparing his failure to that of Doris. Grian whimpers in pain and terror, begging his sis to stop for anything but that. But Lillian is relentless, kicking her brother again and again with furious, precise strikes. As the blows rain down on him, Grian's face twists in agony and despair. His thoughts turn dark, consumed by a single, burning realization. This is all his fault. All of this is because of him. We flash back to the moment Aster offered his hand to the defeated Grian. Grian, confused and broken, had demanded to know what he was talking about. With chilling calm, Aster laid out the grim reality. If the main house heard that Grian got played by a branch house reject and failed the exam, they would have his head. The stark truth of Aster's words sent a shockwave of terror through Grian. Aster then brought up the fate of Doris, reminding Grian of his miserable, inhuman death. Leaning in close, Aster's eyes glowed with menacing intent, his voice a low whisper. He asked Grian if he truly wanted to end up like that. All he had to do was look the other way and let Aster handle things. Faced with an impossible choice, a terrified Grian had no option but to submit to Aster's will. Back in the present, a man's voice orders Lillian to let their brother go. Grian lies on the floor, weeping, as he recognizes the voice of his older brother. The newcomer, Julius A. Elmheim, laughs cruelly at the pathetic sight of his crying sibling. He mockingly says that family has to get along, all while running his hand through the hair of a red-headed woman in a mask. This is Ulfin Elmheim, Aster's sister. Their mother, Helen, watches the scene unfold, her expression like stone, she places a hand on the Elmheim family crest. She declares that their family's long-held reign is beginning to wobble, all because of the reemergence of the Seven Wings. She turns her cold, calculating gaze upon Julius and Lillian. Her orders are simple: remind everyone of the true power of Elmheim's. A wicked, sadistic smile spreads across Lillian's face. She vows to show them that what truly rules the world isn't some fancy title or noble decoration. Julius shares her cruel smile, his own eyes glowing with red light. They will teach the world a lesson in real, brutal violence. A massive group of new cadets faces their first official training exercise. An instructor announces that they have been chosen as candidates for the Honorable Royal Knights. He explains that the Royal Knights are the absolute elite, excelling in combat, strategy, and every other field. The candidates gather before a series of imposing magic iron pillars, ready for their first test. One cadet unleashes a powerful magic-infused strike, but the pillar remains unscathed. He stares in disbelief, having failed to even leave a mark. The academy, the instructor explains, is divided into 6 tiers or grades to tailor the curriculum to each student's level. Grian tries his luck, infusing his sword with purple magic, but his blade shatters on impact, proving his efforts futile. Nolan unleashes a burst of golden magic from his hand. Even this powerful magical assault barely scratches the pillar's surface. The instructor clarifies that true strength comes from mastering both sword and magic. He has no time for mediocre failures who can't prove their strength and earn their freedom. The other candidates look on in shock as Aster effortlessly shatters the pillar with a single, clean strike. With his sword still smoking, Aster stands calmly amidst the debris, a stark contrast to the failures before him. The massive chunk of magic iron he broke off lies on the ground, a testament to his overwhelming power. The instructor congratulates Aster and tells the other student to aim for his level. Watching from a tower, the headmaster and another faculty member observe the proceedings. The headmaster acknowledges Aster's special talent, noting that he shattered a pillar made of the same material as magic golems. He remarks that Aster is undeniably special. The other man warns, however, that the true potential of the Seven Wings is far greater than this. He ominously adds that if Aster becomes complacent, he will be devoured by the dragon lurking within the academy. Later, the new cadets receive their assigned grades. Smythe looks glumly at his card, lamenting that they just passed one exam only to be tested again. He notes that the academy is completely merit-based. Looking around, he sees that almost everyone in their year started at the bottom, in grade 6. The only exceptions are Aster and Nolan, who stand apart from the rest. Smythe's card shows grade 6, while Aster holds a card for grade 4, already 2 tiers above the rest. Aster tells Smythe he needs him to catch up, as only those in grade 2 or higher can become Royal Knights. Smythe lets out a nervous laugh, commenting on how high their new boss sets the bar. The term boss catches Aster by surprise. Smythe reminds him of his declaration to tear down the Elmheim family. He explains that Aster's bold words gave many of them hope. They see him as the one who can actually change things, and they're ready to put him on the throne. With a fist pump, Smythe declares they will knock down Elmheim together. Aster, slightly overwhelmed but resolute, tells them that to achieve that, they all need to get stronger. A determined glint appears in his eye as he reaffirms his goal, to crush Elmheim. He knows that for that to happen, he must become even stronger himself. But first, his stomach rumbles. The rebellion can wait, he needs food. With Smythe slung over his shoulder, Aster heads for the cafeteria, ready for a meal before afternoon training. As they approach, however, they find the entrance crowded and strangely silent. Fellow cadets spot Aster, their faces pale with panic, trying to warn him. They frantically tell him that Elmheim is here. A voice cuts through the tension as a figure casually bites into a piece of bread. It's Julius Elmheim. He smirks at Aster, saying he got tired of waiting and helped himself. Behind him, Lillian and a masked Grian sit at a table looking on with disdain. Smythe realizes with a jolt that the man is Grian's older brother. Aster confirms that this is Julius A. Elmheim, third in line for succession, and his sister Lillian. Smythe shudders, recognizing them as the most notoriously vicious and tyrannical siblings in the entire Elmheim clan. A flashback shows their reputation, built on a mountain of fire and defeated foes. Aster realizes with a sinking feeling that the two of them were here all along. Lillian gets up and saunters over, praising Aster's cute face. She mockingly adds that he's nothing like her ugly, good-for-nothing little brother who lies defeated at her feet. Grian whimpers in pain and humiliation, his face covered by a strange metal mask. Smythe recoils in horror, wondering what kind of creepy mask it is. Aster's expression darkens. He knows exactly what it is. He identifies it as the Iron Shackle, a punishment device the Elmheim family uses to correct their failures. Julius smirks, impressed that a branch house reject is so well informed. He steps on Grian's back, sneering at the pathetic sight. He mocks his brother for carrying the Elmheim name but ending up in the lowly grade 6. To help him work harder, Julius has a special gift for him. With a sadistic grin, he forces the mask tightly onto his brother's face. He explains that the mask turns necessities like food, water, and even air into rewards. Those who wear it are forced to work themselves to death, driven by animalistic desperation. The new cadets look on in horror, realizing the brutal reality of the device. Because if you can't get it off, you die. All of Julius's followers are wearing them, their eyes sharp and hungry. Julius orders the newcomers to show some respect to the masked upperclassmen. Julius then calls out to someone else, telling them to stop hiding and show their face. A figure with long red hair walks forward, her own face hidden by an iron shackle. Aster's group stares in confusion and shock. Aster's eyes widen in utter disbelief and dawning horror. Julius taunts him, asking if his big sister has changed a bit. The red-headed girl is none other than Aster's sister Ulfin. Aster lets out a roar of fury, screaming her name. Ulfin flinches under her mask, a single tear escaping her eye. Bloodlust fills Aster's expression as he grits his teeth. He grips his sword, his knuckles turning white with rage. He screams at Julius, demanding to know what he's done to his sister. He calmly tells Aster to relax. He then throws a pile of identical masks at Aster's feet, one for each of them. Aster and his followers brace themselves, ready for the inevitable fight. With a wide, terrifying grin, Julius welcomes them to a fun little welcoming party. Julius kicks off his welcoming party with a bang, ordering his masked minions to attack the new cadets. He sadistically tells his followers that if they want to eat, they need to slap an iron shackle on every single newcomer. With their eyes glowing and swords drawn, the upperclassmen descend on the terrified first-years. Smythe and the others try to defend themselves, but the masked seniors are on a completely different level. Even Nolan, a grade 4 prodigy, finds himself on the back foot against these relentless attackers. Smythe grits his teeth, realizing that while he expected a fight eventually, he never imagined it would be this soon or this one-sided. Overwhelmed, he desperately calls out to Aster, afraid they'll all end up as another one of Julius's masked puppets. But Aster isn't about to let his followers be taken down so easily. In a flash, he neutralizes 2 of the goons, proving he's not just standing by. A dangerous glint fills his eyes as he focuses on the real threat. His intense aura flares up, catching everyone's attention. He has only one target in mind. Ignoring the small fry, Aster cuts straight to the source, questioning what his cousin thinks he's doing. Julius tells him to relax, claiming this is just his twisted form of kindness. He sneers that Aster's followers are just unskilled nobodies who are coasting on his fame. He explains that letting such trash run around tarnishes the reputation of elites like himself. As the one at the top, he can't possibly allow such half-hearted weaklings to exist in the academy. Therefore, he'll personally take responsibility for whipping them into shape, the brutal Elmheim way. But Aster cuts him off, coldly stating that he never agreed to any of this. With his sword pulsing with power, he gives a single chilling command: take the mask off his sister. He stares Julius down, making it clear he's not asking. But as he lunges, his attack is suddenly blocked. To his horror, the one standing in his way is his own sister, Ulfin. Through the mask, she emotionlessly tells him not to blame her for his grudges. She forces him back, her strength surprising him. Julius laughs, twisting the knife by claiming Ulfin is there of her own free will. He goads Aster, telling him to ask her himself if he doesn't believe it. Lillian can't contain her amusement at the twisted family drama. Aster is devastated, thinking about how worried their mother has been, only to find his sister enslaved by their cousin. Filled with a mix of rage and desperation, he charges at her again. He screams that he doesn't care what they did to her, promising he will save her from their clutches. But Ulfin responds not with words but with a swift and powerful counterattack. He stumbles back, utterly bewildered by her apparent betrayal. Seeing Aster frozen, Nolan decides to take matters into his own hands. Ignoring the small fry, he leaps through the air, aiming a decisive blow directly at Julius. Julius merely glances up, mocking Nolan for being even more tasteless than Grian. Nolan roars at the thought of someone like Julius calling himself a knight makes him sick, demanding he draw his sword. He vows to carve the meaning of Nolan's swordsmanship into Julius's very body. With a sneer, he catches Nolan's sword with own hand, mocking Nolan's righteous ideals. Nolan hesitates for a split second, sensing something is wrong. And in a shocking move, Julius, now wreathed in flames. Nolan's attack connects, but it's not the hit he expected. An intense burning heat radiates through the sword to the Julius arm. Julius's voice rings out, declaring that the only thing that matters is being the strongest. His own power amplified, he casually swats Nolan's blade aside. Nolan is sent flying, crashing to the ground in a heap. He's left gasping in pain, his arm and face covered in brutal burns. Smythe can only stare in horror at the severity of his injuries. As Nolan lies defeated, Lillian saunters over, dangling a mask. She declares that she'll keep the prideful boy as her special pet. She dismisses Smythe as worthless, her eyes only on her new prize. The siblings look down on the chaos, smugly asserting that being weak is a sin and only the strong have a right to speak. Julius turns his attention back to Aster, pointing out that he also used his strength to gather his little rebellion. All around them, Aster's followers are being overpowered and forced into the cruel punishment masks. Julius lectures that in the end, the weak are always absorbed by the strong. He then poses a question to Aster: which side does he truly belong on? But Aster has had enough of the talk. His eyes blaze with fury as he roars his cousin's name. Unleashing a torrent of red and black magic, Aster explodes forward, his rage finally boiling over. But even this furious assault is caught with ease by the flame-wreathed Julius. Aster strains against his cousin's grip, but the power gap is immense. He pushes harder, pouring every ounce of his energy into the attack. Julius grabs Julius by the throat and slamming him backward. Flames courses through Aster's body, he writhes in pain. Smythe can only watch in shock. Julius mockingly asks if this is the full power of the Seven Wings. He expresses his disappointment, having expected Aster to be more of a challenge. Aster's eyes blaze within the inferno. He tells Julius not to get ahead of himself just because he blocked one attack. Suddenly, the crimson magic flowing from Aster's sword begins to move in a strange new way. It swirls around them, creating a vortex of pure, unadulterated magical energy. Julius realizes what's happening. Aster isn't just attacking, he's manipulating the flow of magic itself. To his astonishment, Aster is coiling Julius's own flame magic into his attack, amplifying its power. With a mighty roar, Aster unleashes the combined energy in a single, cataclysmic strike. He lands back on his feet, the attack having clearly taken a toll on him. The dust settles to reveal Julius on the floor amidst the wreckage. Aster casually remarks that he tuned out all of his cousin's monologuing. He then throws Julius's own words back in his face, asking him to repeat his trash should shut up line. Smythe struggles to help the severely injured Nolan. Aster's incredible attack has left the cafeteria in ruins, with Julius seemingly defeated on the floor. But Aster's victory senses tell him something is off. This was far too easy. From the dust and rubble, Julius begins to stir, much to everyone's shock. He rises with a sickening grin, dusting himself off as if he'd just taken a light tumble, completely unharmed. Smythe's jaw drops in disbelief. That cataclysmic attack should have annihilated him. Lillian can't help but cackle at the display, thoroughly enjoying the chaos. She even has the gall to mock her own brother, sarcastically calling his performance pathetic after all his big talk. Picking up his sword, Julius ignores his sister, his focus solely on the one who dared to humiliate him. His charming facade shatters, replaced by pure, unrestrained fury. He roars at Aster for daring to call him trash. Unfazed, Aster stands his ground. Julius explodes in a torrent of fire, lunging at his cousin with murderous intent. Aster meets his charge head-on, his crimson magic coalescing around his blade, ready for the final clash. The two rival powers, Flame and Shadow, hurtle toward each other, promising an explosion that will level the entire hall. Julius swings down with a devastating arc of fire, intending to incinerate Aster on the spot. Aster raises his sword to parry, bracing for the bone-shattering impact. But before their blades can meet, a third person intercepts them from above, stopping the battle cold. The newcomer is none other than the elegant and powerful Count Maze, a high-ranking member of the Academy Board. With a flick of his wrist, he commands his own entourage to secure the area, bringing the brawl to an official halt. Julius seethes with rage, telling the Count to back off and mind his own business. But Maze simply smiles, casually dismissing Julius's tantrum with a wave of his hand. He lectures the fuming Grade 1 valedictorian, reminding him that picking on those beneath him isn't a very dignified look. With effortless grace, Maze places a hand on Julius's blade, his touch extinguishing the raging flames. The sheer difference in their control and power is made silently, humiliatingly clear. Julius clicks his tongue in frustration, knowing he can't win against the Count. Reluctantly, he sheathes his sword, his fiery aura dissipating into the air. Calling off his goons, he announces that the welcome feast is over and begins to retreat with his followers. Aster tries to pursue, screaming that he's not finished yet, but he's suddenly held back. Count Maze restrains him, calmly telling Aster to let this one go for his sake. With a friendly but firm grip on his shoulder, the Count prevents Aster from escalating the situation further. Through the crowd of departing seniors, Aster's eyes lock onto a familiar figure, his sister Ulfin. He calls out to her, but she doesn't even turn as she's led away. Her masked face remains turned away, a chilling display of her complete enslavement. Aster can only watch, helpless and heartbroken, as his sister disappears from sight. On the floor lies the discarded iron shackle meant for them, a grim trophy of their costly, inconclusive battle. Standing amidst the aftermath, Aster's expression hardens with renewed resolve. This is far from over. Later, in a quiet room, Aster's group regroups to assess the damage from Julius's rampage. Nolan lies unconscious and heavily bandaged in the infirmary, a stark victim of the Academy's brutal politics. They recall how Lillian gleefully led away their captured friends, now doomed to become mindless puppets. Smythe, feeling the weight of their defeat, looks to Aster for their next move, asking what they should do now. Aster's gaze falls on Count Maze. He demands an explanation. One of his followers scolds him for his disrespect, but Maze just waves her off with a knowing smile. The Count's carefree demeanor only serves to infuriate Aster further. Aster glares at him, his eyes filled with suspicion. He knows this man is more than he seems. Bitter memory surfaces. 4 years ago, when Aster was summoned to the main house, branded and alone, Maze was the only one who sided with him. Even now, Aster can't figure him out. Maze saved him back then. But he's never been able to tell if he's a true friend or a cunning foe. Smythe can't hold back, demanding to know why Maze, as a board member, would let such blatant abuse of power slide. Maze just chuckles, revealing that he's not just on the board, he's also an Elmheim executive. He explains that unless there's a serious problem, he doesn't interfere with how the head of the house runs things. Furious, Aster holds up the shackle, asking if turning people into mindless tools doesn't qualify as a serious problem. But Maze's logic is twisted. He claims the Academy is merit-based, and if Julius's methods help cadets grow stronger, he won't oppose them. This is the hellish growth. He's referring to a legion of brainwashed soldiers serving a tyrant. The cold truth dawns on Aster. The headmaster himself has approved this. They have no one in a position of power to turn to for help. Maze then warns Aster not to try and rescue his friends. His eyes glint, reminding Aster that the main house is watching his every move. The threat is clear. The entire Elmheim family, a monolithic and terrifying power, could have him expelled at any time. Aster looks down, the weight of the situation pressing on him. He's completely cornered. But abandoning his friends isn't an option. He looks at the shackle, his resolve unwavering. He explains that this isn't about some noble sense of justice. He knows firsthand what these shackles do. They strip away freedom, steal one's voice, and rot the will to defy, turning people into convenient, obedient tools. Maze seems intrigued by Aster's intimate knowledge of the device, asking if he's seen it happen himself. Aster smirks grimly, stating he's seen what becomes of people once it's too late, and he refuses to let that happen to his friends. Smythe and Maze are taken aback by his quiet intensity, realizing he's not giving up. A flicker of understanding crosses Maze's face. He's starting to see what Aster is planning. He watches Aster carefully, a hint of admiration in his eyes. Aster declares that he has no intention of being expelled. If he can't win with brute force, he'll find another way. Oh, Maze leans in, a genuine smile gracing his lips. So you do have a plan. Aster picks up the iron shackle, his expression turning into a cunning grin. He tells Maze that he of all people should already know exactly how he fights. 3 days pass. At the academy, students are pushed through grueling training exercises. Smythe, breathing heavily, checks on his still recovering friend Nolan. Despite his injuries, Nolan insists he can't rest, brushing off Smythe's concern as a mere scratch. Smythe sighs at his friend's stubbornness, but his worry quickly shifts to the one they should truly be concerned about. Far ahead of everyone else, one figure runs with seemingly endless stamina. It's Aster, his expression unreadable behind his mask, but his golden eyes burn with intensity. Earlier, Aster confronted Julius head-on in his headquarters, flanked by his masked enforcers. Julius scoffs, telling Aster he has some nerve showing his face again and questioning why he would dare barge in to make a deal. Surrounded by his followers, including Aster's captive sister Ulfin, Julius leans back with a drink, asking who the hell Aster thinks he is. His eyes glow with contempt, furious that Aster would approach him after their last encounter. But Aster is calm and resolute. He states his purpose clearly: he's here to reclaim his sister and his friends. And he proposes a shocking exchange. He throws the iron shackle to the ground, offering to put it on himself in return for their freedom. The proposition stuns everyone, especially his sister Ulfin, whose eyes widen in disbelief. Aster explains his logic. Word has already spread that he's under suspicion for treason, so putting a collar on the rebel is a good deal for Julius. Lillian can't help but find the situation hilarious, questioning if Aster is insane or just a masochist for volunteering to be a pet. Julius, however, sees the merit in the deal. He admits that Aster has always been a thorn in Elmheim's side. He muses that capturing him like this would surely please his mother and the rest of the family's board. But Julius is no fool. He knows Aster isn't the type to simply play nice and obey, so he demands to know the catch. Aster's reply is chillingly simple: there is no angle. Julius's suspicion doesn't fade, but Aster's confidence is unnerving. Aster reminds him that the shackle completely seals his magic, and only Julius possesses the key to unlock it. He can be killed at any time. With a taunting grin, Aster challenges his cousin, asking if he's not confident enough to break him. The taunt hits its mark. Julius's rage ignites, his magic flaring to life. The bottle in hand starts melting. A sadistic smile spreads across his face as he agrees to Aster's terms. But a simple exchange would be too merciful for the bastard who humiliated him. He smashes the bottle and adds a brutal condition to the deal. Aster must wear the shackle for 10 days with no food and no water. If Aster can survive this ordeal, Julius, with a mad grin, promises he'll let everyone go. Ulfin is horrified, knowing that this is an impossible task designed to kill him. She panics, certain that her brother is walking into a death trap from which he won't return. But Aster's resolve is unshakable. He accepts the terms and kneels, ready to receive his sentence. He knows that the iron shackles rot people from the inside, a fact he's intimately familiar with after being raised as a tool in the Elmheim house. He remembers the sister he once knew, fiery, stubborn, and strong. She was his big sister who was easily hurt, but never let anyone see that softness. But now that same sister can't even stand up to scum like Julius. She's just a weak and powerless shell. He makes a silent vow he will break those chains for her so they can truly talk again. And so Aster's ordeal begins. Back in the training grounds, the other students are being relentlessly drilled. An instructor screams at the collapsed cadets, asking who gave them permission to rest. Even Grian is pushed to his absolute limits, wondering why he have to endure this hell. Smythe and Nolan watch from the sidelines, noting that not even Julius's elite group is exempt from this brutal regimen. Smythe worries for their captured friends, thinking they'll perish from the harsh treatment before Aster can save them. But Nolan points out that one person seems to be karmically unaffected by the strain. Smythe looks over in disbelief at what he sees. It has been days now, and Aster is still running without any signs of fatigue. Nolan analyzes the situation logically. A normal person can only last 3 or 4 days without sustenance. A week at the absolute maximum, and that's only if they're conserving energy, not undergoing torturous physical training. Aster has been sparring, and forced to swim with heavy packs day in and day out. By all accounts, he should have hit his limit long ago, and yet his pace hasn't slowed in the slightest. Nolan recalls an old rumor he once heard about the mythical 7-winged child. The legend says that before he was found, the infant crawled for kilometers through a snow-covered mountain, all alone. He asks Smythe if such a story were true, wouldn't that demonstrate an almost supernatural will to live? Smythe, for his part, dismisses it as a tall tale. Meanwhile, in the dungeons, the situation is far more grim for Aster's classmates. Lillian arrives for what she cruelly calls feeding time for the sewer rats. With a snap of her fingers, her magic activates. The shackles from the mouth of the captives drops. Their daily ration is revealed: a single, pathetic slice of cheese and 1 cup of water. One of the captives breaks down, crying that he's at his limit and this is going to kill them. Grian is reduced to begging his sister Lillian for something decent to eat. In response, Lillian simply stomps her boot into his plate, crushing the food into a paste. She sneers, telling him he shouldn't waste food when he could have just said he didn't want it. After all, she reminds them, there's someone else out there suffering far more than any of them. We see Aster sitting alone in the dark, silently enduring his trial. From a balcony above, Julius feasts on a juicy steak, sadistically watching his cousin's torment. He turns to Ulfin, who is forced to sit beside him, and mockingly asks if she shouldn't go cheer her admirable little brother on. Or perhaps he jeers with a demonic grin, she can't even look him in the eye. Knowing he only ended up in this state because of her, his taunts are followed by a roar of laughter. The psychological torture works. Ulfin trembles, whispering her brother's name, consumed by guilt and helplessness. Back at his feast, Julius's glee is tempered by confusion. He had assumed Aster had some kind of trick up his sleeve. Yet for days, Aster has shown no sign of resisting at all, simply sitting there and taking it. The question hangs in the air. Is he seriously planning to endure the full 10 days? A wicked grin spreads across Julius's face. Fine by him. He decides he'll enjoy the show and see just how long his cousin's pride can last. But little does he know, Aster's will is forged from something far stronger than pride, and his golden eyes still burn with resolve in the darkness. A lecture on mana begins, explaining how channeling it into a blade turns it into a razor-sharp edge. Channeling it through the body, however, transforms it into impenetrable armor. An instructor lectures his students on the flexible nature of mana, explaining that it changes its role based on the user's will. He explains how mana can act as legs, allowing one to outrun even a horse. Other times it can be used as eyes, spotting an enemy's movements before they even happen. During training, a student leaves himself wide open, and 2 attackers move in for the kill. However, mana can also be used as a trump card, a way to turn the tide of battle in an instant. Aster unleashes a powerful gust of wind, a whirlwind of red energy that completely changes the battlefield. His opponents are caught off guard, wondering what just happened as the red wind swirls around them. They look around in confusion, trying to locate Aster, who seems to have vanished into thin air. But he hasn't vanished. He's launched himself high into the air right above them, ready to strike. He plummets from the sky, a crimson meteor of vengeance aimed directly at his target. With a single devastating strike, he takes down his opponent, ending the battle decisively. The scene shifts to a different lesson, where an instructor lectures a group of students, including Aster, on specialized mana manipulation, which they'll be learning in the 4th grade curriculum. He demonstrates its lethal potential by firing a concentrated beam of mana, instantly killing a bird in mid-flight. He explains with a chilling smile that for those with a crest, there are plenty of ways to kill without ever touching a blade. Back in the present, Aster stands over his fallen classmates, his own red mana flickering ominously. 7 days have now passed, 7 days since Aster began his life under Julius's thumb. He's been using the mock combat training to get a better handle on mana manipulation. With only 3 days left, he steels himself, knowing that if he can just endure, his sister and the others will be freed. But he quickly realizes that simply enduring won't be enough to secure their future. He recalls Julius's terrifying power, an overwhelming force even without a weapon in hand. The memory of his cousin's smug, condescending face flashes in his mind. Aster knows he can't afford to get stuck here. He has to grow stronger fast, but even as his will burns, his body is starting to give out. The exhaustion is overwhelming. He needs to grasp something, anything that can help him close the gap between him and Julius. But his vision blurs, the world around him beginning to distort and spin. His body finally betrays him, the world is spinning and he knows this is bad. After days of starvation and non-stop training, Aster finally collapses. A figure approaches, looming over his unconscious form, questioning if he's finally hit his limit. Placing a hand on Aster's mask, the newcomer checks his temperature. It's Nolan. He confirms Aster is burning up with a fever, but remarks that it's no surprise for a human pushed so far beyond their limits. Nolan reveals that Count Maze was worried Aster might actually die, so he tasked Nolan with stepping in if things got too dire. Nolan wonders why the Count would be concerned for him, but he cuts his thought off. He tells Aster to hold on, offering to grab his sword and break the muzzle off him right then and there. But even in his weakened state, Aster finds the strength to grab Nolan's arm, stopping him. Nolan is shocked, asking what he thinks he's doing. He desperately tells Aster he's going to die if he keeps this up. But Aster pushes him away, his resolve unwavering despite his condition. Through gritted teeth, he forces out the words, "If he breaks now, who's going to save his sister?" Nolan sighs, unable to understand his friend's stubbornness. He gets the message though. Aster refuses to back down from his promise. But he gives a stark warning, don't expect those bastards to play as fair as you are. And right on cue, trouble arrives. Nolan stands protectively over Aster as a new group emerges from the shadows. The group parts to reveal a smirking Lillian, flanked by Julius's masked enforcers. She mocks Aster's pale complexion, joking that he might be mistaken for an undead and killed. Aster glares at her, his hatred burning through his exhaustion. Nolan steps forward, questioning what a 2nd grade student is doing at a 4th grade training session. Lillian, with a sickly sweet smile, explains that her 4th grade followers wanted to show off for her, so she decided to make a class visit. The crowd of masked students watches on, their eyes glowing with malice. Lillian perches herself on a tree branch, looking down like a queen observing her court. Her true intentions are laid bare. She tells Aster she's here to see him on his knees, crying and begging for mercy. With a final taunt, she tells him not to mind her and unleashes her dogs. The students descend upon Aster and Nolan in a wave of purple-tinged violence. Aster realizes their plan. They're going to crush him before the 10 days are up, making his sacrifice meaningless. He blocks an incoming attack, annoyed at how blatant they're being. He parries another blow, regret flashing in his eyes as he realizes he's dragged Nolan into this mess. They're completely outnumbered, surrounded on all sides. Aster knows they can't win in a straight-up brawl, they'll just be worn down. He needs a plan. Lillian watches with glee, taunting Aster that he's the one at fault for being so stubborn. Since he won't just give up, she declares he'll just have to look even more miserable for her entertainment. Nolan spots a hulking brute charging at the weakened Aster, and screams for him to dodge. Aster quickly turns his head to look, but it's already too late, he's already in the grasp of the brute. The blow is brutal and Aster crashes to the tree, blood splattering from his mask. Nolan can only watch in horror as his friend lies broken on the forest floor. From her perch, Lillian calls down, telling them not to kill him just yet. She still plans on making him her pet, so she gives a simple order, just beat him within an inch of his life. A goon grabs Aster by the hair, his eyes rolled back in his head as he hangs limply. But as a final, crushing blow descends, something in Aster's hand flickers. A sudden realization hits him, a plan, a way out. His golden eyes snap open, burning with renewed fire as he declares he's got it. A torrent of crimson energy explodes from his body, making numbers of slashes on the hand holding his head. Lillian's smug expression falters, replaced by one of genuine shock. She can't believe what she's seeing. Aster deflects the blow with ease, the force of his newfound power sending leaves and debris swirling around him. His eyes, no longer clouded by exhaustion, are sharp and focused, blood dripping from his mask. The goon holding Aster reels back, his hand sliced open by a torrent of crimson energy. He stares in shock, realizing Aster's mana surged through his arm like a blade the moment he touched him. Aster rises, his body now wreathed in a terrifying blade-like aura. The other goons hesitate, one wondering if it's a mana barrier but noting it's far too thin and sharp. Unfazed, the brute from before charges in, his fist cloaked in purple energy, ready to crush Aster once and for all. But Aster calmly raises a single hand, his red mana swirling in anticipation. He effortlessly grabs the brute head and sends crimson mana slashes throughout his body. The once mighty brute now lies broken on the ground, a testament to Aster's newfound power. From her perch, Lillian's smug confidence completely evaporates, replaced by beads of sweat and disbelief. She realizes with horror that Aster is using attribute shift, a high-level technique even second graders struggle to master. Aster, however, is perfectly calm. He understands this is on a whole new level from simple body or weapon reinforcement. He unleashes a whirlwind of severing mana, effortlessly carving through Lillian's forces. The narrator explains that this technique imbues mana with a specific nature. For example, if someone has a fire attribute, their mana incinerates everything it touches. But Aster's mana has a severing attribute, shredding anything it comes into contact with. The remaining goons tremble in fear, acknowledging it's an incredibly advanced technique that most never learn in their lives. Aster moves through them like a reaper, a dance of red light and pure destruction. Lillian's internal monologue concludes that there's no mistaking it. Right now, Aster is capable of killing a man with nothing but his raw mana. Even Nolan is stunned, wondering if Aster has now far surpassed him. Lillian lands gracefully, a flicker of admiration in her eyes, admitting he's not bad at all. Standing over one of her fallen men, she confesses she never thought he had it in him. But as she observes the scene, a wicked smile spreads across her face. She's found a weakness. For all his overwhelming power, she points out that he hasn't actually killed a single person. She draws her own blade, imbuing it with purple mana, and orders her worthless trash to get up. To prove her point, she brutally slashes one of her own men, not to kill, but to punish his failure. Disgusted by her cruelty, Nolan calls her absolute pond scum. But just as the conflict is about to escalate, a flash of red light emanates from Captive's collar. In an instant, the mana-restraining masks on all of Julius's captives shatter into pieces. Lillian is left utterly speechless. What just happened? The newly freed students stare at their hands, shocked that the restrictive masks are gone. One gasps for air, overwhelmed with the simple relief of being able to breathe freely again. Nolan looks at Aster in awe, realizing he performed such a feat of delicate mana control in the middle of a battle. Aster didn't just smash the masks, he used his severing attribute to precisely cut only the locking mechanisms. Lillian scoffs, asking so what? She sneers that her well-behaved pets know their place. She tells Aster his heroics were a waste of time, as they'll just put the masks back on after they're done with him. With a shriek, she orders her dogs to attack him. But her followers don't move. They simply stand and stare at her with cold, empty eyes. She glances around frantically, her anger turning to confusion. The tables have turned. The very students she controlled now surround her. Nolan smirks, remarking that their souls are so rotten, they'd rather turn on their master than accept freedom. Nolan steps forward, menacingly asking Lillian if she's ready to face them herself. Panic finally sets in on Lillian's face as she's cornered by her former minions. Nolan, enjoying the show, turns to a quiet Aster. He says with a grin that since Aster wasn't saying anything, he figured he'd speak for him. Seeing her impending doom, Lillian resorts to taunts, yelling that with his power, Aster could have broken his own mask anytime. She questions why he's so obediently waiting for the promised day, despite his vow to crush her family. She spits that his naive sense of honor is going to be his downfall. Standing alone, Aster quietly agrees that she's probably right. But he explains that as the son of a viscount, he can't act recklessly. He has a duty to his family, and refuses to do anything that would bring shame to his father's name. As his conviction wavers under the weight of his exhaustion, Nolan suddenly cries out a warning. As Aster collapses, he sees a figure rush toward him, but it's not an attack. He collapses into the arms of his sister Ulfin. Holding him close, she tells him he's always been this reckless. She apologizes for being the big sister who always needs saving. She thanks him, saying his courage has now given her the strength she needs. Clutching him tightly, she promises that she'll be fine now. The world fades to black, and Aster awakens later, catching a glimpse of himself in a window. He bolts upright in a strange bed, screaming his sister's name. He finds himself alone in a large, moonlit room. Was it all a dream, a hallucination brought on by the fever and exhaustion? He throws the blankets aside, ready to search for answers. But his eyes fall upon a single, folded letter left on his bed. He cautiously opens it, his golden eyes scanning the contents. His expression shifts from confusion to pure horror. He crumples the paper in his fist, his heart sinking with a terrible premonition. His whisper echoes in the empty room, filled with dread, "Sister, don't tell me." So after reading that letter from his sister, Aster is in a full-blown panic. He tries to make a break for it, but he doesn't get far before Count May steps in his way, telling him to calm down since he's in no condition to be running anywhere. The guy spots the crumpled letter on the floor and reads it. Turns out it's exactly what Aster feared. His sister Ulfin wrote that she was sorry for being a coward, but seeing his courage gave her strength. It was her turn to save him now, just like he'd protected her before. This is the last thing Aster wanted. He's furious that she'd do something so reckless, making all his suffering pointless. He shoves past the guy and smashes his way out the door, only to find the worst-case scenario waiting for him. His sister is on the ground, beaten and bruised, with Lillian standing over her looking bored. Lillian casually explains that Ulfin came to beg for Aster's release because she thought he was going to die. The sudden show of courage from the girl who was always so terrified apparently pissed Lillian off, so she decided to play with her a bit to blow off steam. That's the breaking point. Aster realizes he was too soft, that trying to make a deal was a mistake. He flashes back to his father's words. A knight must endure any hardship, but they must always know why they fight, and be ready to draw their sword without hesitation when the time truly comes. And for Aster, that time is now. He grabs a sword off the floor, and a massive golden aura erupts from his body. Everyone, including Lillian and Julius, is shocked. From a window, Count Maze watches, wondering if Aster has actually gone berserk. Aster isn't just angry. He's channeling pure, unadulterated killing intent, roaring for every last drop of Elmheim blood to be eradicated. Even his sister weakly tries to call out to him. He lunges, but Julius intercepts him with a grin. He speaks, "So this is the power of 7 wings, and he's impressed Aster can pull this off while on the verge of death." He taunts our boy, asking if he's sure about this rampage. After enduring so much to save his friends, Aster just screams his family's name, Elmheim, as he attacks. The blonde guy seems thrilled. He was planning on crushing Aster anyway, so he figures they might as well settle this now. Aster and Julius's auras collide in a blinding explosion of gold and red energy. The sheer force of their power sends guards scrambling for their lives. Even Lillian, who's usually so composed, can't hide her shock at the raw power on display. Aster, despite his injuries, moves like a mad demon, his body wreathed in the golden aura of the 7 wings. From a safe distance, even Grion is taken aback, noting that Aster is pouring out far more mana than when they fought. He realizes this is what happens when 2 crest holders finally go all out. The shockwave from their clash is so powerful it even sends Ulfin flying. Julius easily blocks another one of Aster's furious strikes, a smirk playing on his lips. He notices that Aster, who was losing his mind over Ulfin just a moment ago, doesn't even see her lying on the floor anymore. The blonde prince is genuinely confused, wondering what kind of single-minded rage is driving his brother right now. But inside Aster's head, there's only one repeating command: to eradicate and wipe them all out, down to the very last drop of Elmheim blood. He lunges low, looking to devour Julius whole. Julius instantly recognizes the move. Aster is trying to strip away his mana again, just like he did at the cafeteria. But Julius isn't about to fall for the same trick, roaring that he won't give Aster that luxury. Lillian panics, screaming for her brother to watch out as Aster's mana surges. But Julius is unfazed, though he's surprised to find Aster's mana can actually cut. The slashes from Aster's mana leave shallow cuts on his body, but he seems more intrigued than hurt. He feels the small cuts sting, realizing the true nature of Aster's power. Julius gets sent skidding back, but a confident grin spreads across his face as he rips off his torn shirt. The stone floor cracks and melts under his feet as his aura intensifies. He admits that a slashing attribute is rare enough, and Aster has some clever tricks. He gets serious, confessing that this is the first time he's felt someone's mana could actually kill him. But he warns Aster not to think his power is just about simple heat. As his crimson aura turns into a raging inferno, he declares that his mana is deathly hot. The sheer intensity of the heat hits Aster like a physical blow. Julius boasts that his power is on another level, capable of making anyone lose the will to resist just by his presence. The guards in the background are already trembling, proving his point. He scoffs that Aster's desperation means nothing. because the only thing that matters is who's left standing at the end. He unleashes a massive wave of heat. Julius taunts our boy, saying he can do more than just growl. But this pathetic struggle is over. Lillian watches with a look of pure disgust, calling him gross for hurting his own body just to keep fighting. But Ulfin can only watch in horror, whispering her brother's name. Her mind flashes back 7 years ago to the last time she saw Aster in this state. Back then, their father had to risk his own life to stop his son's berserk rampage. It was after that incident that Aster began to push his family away, consumed by guilt. Their father called it the 7 wings going berserk. But Ulfin always believed it was something more. She knew Aster just couldn't forgive himself for being too weak and hurting the people he loved. Back in the present, Aster lands another desperate blow, but the pressure from Julius's heat is too much. Ulfin sees her brother faltering again. She cries internally, wondering why he always has to turn the blade on himself like this. Julius easily parries the weakened attack and sends Aster sprawling to the ground. Ulfin's eyes widen in terror as she watches her brother fall. Aster lies face down, completely spent, his sword clattering out of his reach. Julius stands over him, looking down at his defeated brother. He gives him some credit, admitting his tenacity is something else, but he's had enough. He raises his sword, telling Aster to just die already. He mutters that stubborn bastards like him just piss him off. But just as he's about to deliver the final blow, something feels wrong. His eyes go wide with shock. His entire body is suddenly covered in deep, bleeding cuts. He stares at his hands in disbelief, wondering when he got these wounds. He can't even put strength into his arm. On the floor, Aster begins to stir, his mask cracking and falling apart. With a final, guttural roar of his family's name, his golden aura explodes from his body one last time. Julius can't believe it, he's still coming. Running on nothing but pure, unadulterated rage, Aster makes one final, desperate charge.